Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to 2.5 Talent. It's been 2 weeks, we're stuck to the schedule, we're back for another episode. A lot to talk about. We've had end of Pro League since we last spoke, with the RMRs most importantly, and of course now we've got our teams locked in towards Rio. But before we get underway with any of that, my name's Nekaj, I'm the lovely Dat Paladin and Trav. Lads, what have you been up to? Let me know who wants to go first. Paladin, you want to let us know what have you been up to?
I've been the biggest cheerleader the world has ever seen. Both of you guys have been up to a lot of stuff, but I've been kind of just watching from the sidelines, trying to watch everything I possibly can. There's been a lot of CS. I mean, personally, I don't really agree with the scheduling of everything at once, but
Yeah.
you gotta take it as it comes. And I think that was a very interesting experience, having like 6 streams up at once and recording and jotting things down. And
Yeah.
but the content is good. The teams are even better. I'm glad that you guys had a ball, and I think that we'll have some good stuff in the future as well. Like I think this is just a really nice upward trajectory in the future.
There we go. Trav, hit me. What have you been up to? I know, of course, you've been working on
Paladin,
the
didn't you
RMR.
cast today? Didn't you do
I
a
did cast
Paladin?
today.
Yeah, go on.
I casted Elisa today, but come on, it's no RMR.
Wait, who did you cast second game? Obviously, the first one got cancelled.
Sinners and Sashi.
Oh, who won?
It was very Sinners. It was a very
Yeah.
whatever game. It was,
Yeah, Sinners they've been disappointing recently. I gotta
Yeah.
say, it's actually quite tough to watch that team now. Without Oscar and without Neo Frag, there's not a lot going on there. But
Yeah.
Trav, what we got for me?
So I have, just like you, Neo, have exciting RMR stuff. I didn't necessarily get cast Phase Clan or Overtime Clan, as I like to
Yes,
call
the
it from
gods.
this particular RMR, but I did manage to do 4 matches which all had a lot on the line. I eliminated Ecstatic. I saw Sprout qualify. I saw Astralis get eliminated, and that was a match that had 75,000 people watching, I think, which was terrifying, but I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
And I saw Gamer Legion make it through as well 2-0, and that was also a very nice crowning moment to finish off my RMRs with.
Nice, not too bad. Of course, I guess I can follow that. Yeah, I was on the RMR as well. It was pretty good. I got to cast FaZe Sprout, which was their qualification game for FaZe, which was sick, to be perfectly honest. I think that one had just shy of like 60,000, I think, at one point. It like peaked, which was pretty awesome. FaZe obviously saw that one out pretty comfortably, but it was pretty good. It was good. I had some good games. I had FaZe Sprout, which was probably the biggest of the names. I think probably the best game that I watched was Bait versus Fnatic on Ancient Best of One. Bait just decimated them. It was such a good game to watch. What else I have? Oh, I had an absolute stinker with Fantasy versus Illuminar. That was that was a tough watch. From going from FaZe Sprout the day before, seeing like seeing the best team in the world and one of the best up and coming teams in the world, to then follow up with arguably the 2 worst teams in the competition was quite funny. But that was definitely a tough one. And then I think aside from that, I don't know who else I got to cast. I'm actually too sure. I saw quite a few. I think I had 2 best of 1s, 4 best of 3s. So not too bad. I think most of my stuff was over in towards Group A, if I'm right in saying. No, Group B with
It'll be Group B.
Yeah, Group B with like the likes of like Heroic and Big and stuff like that. But yeah, either way, it was very good. Oh, I saw Outsiders get
OG,
knocked into Outsiders OG. That was actually a really good game. OG played for the first time in a long time. Thankfully, actually played really well. I saw that out on map 3, so that was actually a good watch. OG actually pleasantly surprised me. Outsiders, it was a little bit close for comfort, but of course, saw out in the end. But yeah, and then of course I followed up. So I did 3 days of the RMR, and then straight away afterwards, I did 1 day of the best scene in the world. UK Prem, baby. You're damn right. Relegations. Not even the teams in UK Prem. The teams who got relegated from UK Prem trying to get back into UK Prem.
Yeah.
So that was I gotta say, actually, I was saying to Retro at the time, like, it was actually quite comical going from 2 days ago having FaZe Sprout to then doing If I Speak versus
Lizards.
It's like
Every time I tuned into the stream, man, it was like overtime, and I was
we
like,
got shafted.
I can't do this.
We got shafted. We had 2 best of 3s in a row, and 2 best of 3s, 5 maps, and about 7-hour stream. It was ridiculous. It was. Oh my god! I think in one series, in the last one it was a 2-0, but in one series, 8 ecos were won, like full ecos, USPs against full buys. Like actually comical when you watch like FaZe versus that. But no, I quite like being part of UK Prem. It's like it's nice to get back to the grassroots. So it was good to do that, and of course I'll doing quite a lot of the regular season too. So that'll be quite fun. But yeah, not too shabby, all things considered. Of course, last time we spoke, I think we were just at the start of the playoffs for Pro League. I think literally at the time of speaking, Fnatic were playing, if I'm right in saying, against Liquid. Yeah. But of course, we have our winners now. We can sort of take a look as to how things panned out for that one. Of course, for us, we know who ended up winning. It was the mighty Vitality. Not a bad start. I think overall it was quite an interesting Pro League. A lot of ups and downs and a lot of kind of individual stepping up. We obviously know about Zywoo with one of the most ridiculous individual showings in a long time. Just his stats alone were substantial. But yeah, that's thoughts. Pro League.
I guess I'll start with Liquid just because I feel like I'm legally required to.
You are
I
the
think,
representative.
yeah, I think everybody should hold their horses on Liquid, at least after watching them in the RMRs as well, and just how they got to the finals. It was very like, okay, well, you look at their bracket to initially start, and you beat Fnatic and Mouse, which, look, they are pretty formidable teams in some respects, but as you see in the stuff they did in the RMRs as well, it was kind of so. They're a very whatever team in some aspects. In other aspects, they're very exciting, but they've still got a ways to go. And then you play Cloud9, who, I mean, you could argue you have a mental edge. You could say Cloud9 has a bit fragile in playoff situations, and I think that you could make a very good argument that their heads just weren't in it at that point in time. And I mean, even so, you could still argue that, like, okay, that's like their one BO3 win that they had in their playoffs. But then you look at the other side of the bracket, and you look at the way people got through their side of the bracket. You have the Navis and the Heroics, the G2s, the Vitalities, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And Vitality had to really earn it. I think they had to really earn their finals appearance. And I don't think Liquid had the same. And some of the individuals just were non-existent. Like it was very much the Naf and Yekindar show. I mean, I think Yekindar even more so.
For sure.
But Elige had a huge drop-off in performance in the grand finals, and OC was super hit or miss. In the playoffs, he definitely stepped up, but I think he is the major issue for this team. And basically, if he's not acclimated, this team is very mid, I guess.
I love OC, but I think you're right. I think in groups he was brutal. I mean, it's a tough watch at times in groups. I think in playoffs he was a lot more stable, which is I think kind of nice to see. And I think for the most part for our playoffs he was pretty good. I think maybe hiccups here or there, but I think it's right. But yeah, his groups were pretty bad. And of course, it's like one of those things like you can't be going through these hot and cold periods. Like he's very good when he's on the hot period. And we saw that in playoffs, especially kind of in the opening two games against like kind of Fnatic and Mouse. He was pretty good, but yeah, I think he was rough. It's kind of rough also to see Elige. Like he had an absolute disaster class towards the finals. I mean, his stats were poor. I know obviously there's all the kind of comments about difference in roles and whatever. But I mean, he himself even came out on Twitter, was like, yeah, like that was poor from me. Like I do apologize. Like I really just couldn't show up today. And a lot of reliance was on kind of Yekindar stepping up. I mean, we all kind of talk about Yekindar in towards Banana on Inferno, like an absolute. I think at the halfway mark on Inferno, when Liquid on T side, Yekindar was 8-3 or something on entries, like just a stupidly bonkers stat. Yeah, he was brilliant. But I mean, if we're going to speak about brilliance, we have to talk about the other side, right? The Vitality, Zywoo putting up one of the best. Not even finals performance, not one game, like the entire tournament. I think he finished on a 1.42 for the whole tournament, which is just like scary levels of consistency. Like this is kind of one of those things now for me, with Zywoo, where, I mean, we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail with your segment later, but for him, like, that is insane, kind of what he could have brought to the table. So yeah, I think there's definitely a case to be made of with Vitality. They kind of grafted through all the way. I mean, they had quite a long run to make through Outsiders, then G2, and then of course towards Liquid, where for Liquid, Mouse and Fnatic as starters aren't really anything to write home about, just because I think Mouse is still... They're good, but they're untested just because they're the youngsters. Fnatic are still not 100% in my books. Cloud9's a great win, but Cloud9 hadn't played a game in, 3 months prior to Pro League, because they weren't in Blast. Cool. It was only at Cologne was their last game. It was like 3 months ago. So there's kind of a case to be made that maybe fatigue played in for them, which is why they struggled. But yeah, I mean, I guess on the other side though, for me, when I started following CS at a high level, I was originally a Liquid fan, kind of because of Stewie. I do like seeing them back in the conversation at the very least. Because
that is very important, right? Like it's always big for a region to have a #1 team that actually competes at like a higher level. I'm talking like deep playoff runs.
Yes, yeah.
And you have something to vie for. You have like an end goal of sorts. Regardless, I mean, if they are shitting the bed, then I mean, you might actually consider that there's no hope for your region. And I think that has happened in previous moments where you kind of had Liquid being very average and Evil Genius is doing whatever that org likes to do.
Yeah.
It's tough, but now like there is an upward trajectory for NA in general, and I think it starts with how Liquid perform. You can see just the region's tweets as a whole. Like you can just see how much more positive the outlook is on everything.
It's more vocal from NA now, right? Isn't it? Which is nice, right?
It's a net positive. It's just a net positive overall. Even if it's like somewhat of an overrated performance, there is still a lot of positives that you can take away from it.
Yeah, the sort of overrated performance, right? You say. I mean, I do understand that, but at the same time, I think they justified it. I mean, there were so many moments in that grand final where I thought, the crumble would be back,
That is true.
There was, I think unfortunately, there was a bit of a crumble all overpass, and the only way they were going to win it would have been to take overpass, obviously, because Vertigo was always going to go the opposite way. But yeah, Zoe was unplayable. Just his positional play. It wasn't even necessarily it's not like he was lighting up the server with ridiculous aim clips, like ridiculous flicks or whatever. He was just positionally putting himself somehow in the right position every single bloody round, especially on Mirage. That performance was just absolutely dirty. And I think just overall as well, for Pro League full stop, it was really nice to see the semi-finals be Cloud9 Liquid G2 Vitality. I think knowing that we'd have one of those teams winning Pro League was just really fun, because obviously
it was refreshing as well.
A little bit FaZe Navi dominated in recent times, so
yeah, I think that's nice. Me. I kind of thought it would be a FaZe G2. I said that on last pod, and the fact that I think that's probably one of the bigger things to mention too, right? FaZe going out to Cloud9, that's not one that anyone expected or anyone really thought was going to happen. I think there's definitely, a case to be made about a competition there. But the fact that, I think for me, it was definitely a massive sort of underperformance from FaZe. They really at times struggled to get into the game. Some of the individuals really struggled to get into the game as well. It was quite rough overall. I mean, credit to Cloud9, but then the fact that they couldn't kind of continue that kind of consistency. Look at some of the stats as well. Axel, 1.54 he ended up overall in the series, where for FaZe, their highest rated player was Rops with 1.05. Like, no one could really get going. Ray not even finishing positive. Twist not finishing positive is kind of, telling of what went wrong. They just never really got into the game. While some of the maps were close, it was pretty good from Cloud9. It's just a shame what happened against Liquid, where it was the complete opposite.
I think the thing about that FaZe C9 game is it means so much more to C9 than it does to FaZe, because the thing about FaZe is Kerrigan has always been in Nafany's head. I think I've talked about this a numerous number of times. The way he calls circles around C9 as a whole has been just nothing short of brilliant. It's like, if you ever want to prove why he's one of the greatest in-game leaders of all time, you just watch a FaZe C9 series. But the difference is that it changed in Dallas, and then I think that's where the caveat started to come out. Hey, they came off the major win. You took a look at the stats of every major winner, bar Navi, absolutely bombed out of the subsequent event that they attended. And then it was like, okay, well, is C9 going to prove themselves? Well, largely the community suggested not, but you could clearly see it just meant that much more to them when they won against FaZe. So I think that rivalry is a very interesting one, and it's starting to slowly lean over to C9 just because they want it just a little bit more. And I think nowadays it's going to be a little bit more dangerous for FaZe because they have another team to look out for just initially in the bracket side of things. But I think one thing that was super surprising was Na'Vi as well.
For sure.
Simple looked mortal. I thought that was kind of insane that he looked mortal. Yeah, maybe it was Moldgate. I have no idea. But there was that. There was Bit also looking still out of sorts.
Yeah,
and it had to be a lot of perfecto. Yeah, it had to be a lot of perfecto, and you don't really rely on that guy trying to go huge that often. But he was the guy that kind of bailed them out of a lot of scenarios, and if that's the case, that's kind of worrying.
Yeah.
I also made the point recently as well. Like, I mean, it is huge speculation, and I realized Pro League was hugely important for both FaZe and Navi, and especially FaZe because they're on the edge of the Intel Grand Slam. But I do have a slight thought that perhaps there was obviously trying their best, but not doing the best. You know, not going deep into the strat book.
Yeah, strat
maybe
saving for the
some
major.
strats.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're saving a little bit of energy for the major because it was very close to the RMR when Pro League finished, of course, very close. There wasn't really much of a gap to have a relaxation or a boot camp, obviously, or anything like that. So I think for FaZe and Navi's case, they realized how much is on the line going to Rio, and in FaZe's case especially, knowing how winning the Intel Grand Slam at Rio would probably be the most legendary Counter-Strike moment of all time. So, yeah, realistically, I think that they weren't going to be at full strength. They were going to make it difficult for everyone, but as we saw even in the RMR, which we'll get onto later, FaZe have a habit of winning with their B game. So this B game, C game couldn't win them the games this time, unfortunately.
Can you imagine, right? Just for a second, that they win every single S tier tournament within the last year, and they cap the Grand Slam with Katowice, Cologne, and the Rio Major. That is an absolutely insane feat.
What FaZe and Navi put into Cologne, I mean, I was so fortunate enough to be in the arena for that grand final. Like, what they put into Cologne, the effort they put in to get there, and then go head to head as they did in that grand final, probably I think touted as, you know, it's up there with that Pro League final with Luminosity and was it G2 back then?
G2, yes.
Back in like 2016, 2015, like it was up there with one of the best of fives.
I would say it's the best.
And I'm going to say this. And this Pro League final wasn't too bad either. True. I would put this Pro League grand final, this BO5, into one of the best BO5s I've watched. I would say maybe top 3 would be tough, but definitely top 5 for me. But yeah, I think Cologne was one of the best ever, and you could see how much effort they put into that. So I can understand that maybe they want to do the same for the major and didn't necessarily try put as much heart and soul as much blood and tears, as they say, into Pro League as they did to
I'd say
the major.
Cologne is I'd say it's top 2 and 8 second. Like, that was such a good final. I mean, I think the only thing that makes for me actually the maybe not top 3 for the Liquid Vitality game is the fact that kind of everybody knew when it went to Vertigo, oh well, it's done now. Like, that's kind of the unfortunate thing. It's kind of, like, we were all in
yeah, I get that.
I think we were in a call, or we were messing at the time, but we all said the same thing. Like, we're like, oh, you know, if it's not close and overpass and it goes to map number 5 of Vertigo, it's done, which is really unfortunate. I think when you look towards kind of previous best of 5s that go the full distance, maybe wasn't as much of that, but that's the thing with like Liquid's slightly shaky Vertigo, that it was like, it felt like, oh damn it, that's really unfortunate. Like any other map, maybe we have a different conversation there, but not the case. But I think I think there's definitely an argument to be made about strat saving. I think that was pretty evident, may I say, not prevalent, in towards the RMR too, like them going to overtime with everyone on their nan. Was a case made about, I think they're just doing as much as they can, because if FaZe see out the Intel Grand Slam at Rio in probably what is going to be the biggest major ever in terms of in-person and online viewership, in terms of hype and everything around it, I think that would probably be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, stories in esports probably ever. I think it's probably, it can go up there in terms of like one of the greatest kind of like feats and the way they did it, just because it's like at Rio in a country which is the most ecstatic fans when it comes towards CS:GO, like the most devoted fans in the game, in what is probably one of the biggest majors ever, in a major that we've been waiting for like 3 years now, because it was we were meant to happen years back. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I'll have to wait and see. But this is kind of move on quite nicely on towards your segment, Paladin, about Vitality.
Yeah, I made a video on them because I wanted to really dissect as to how they won the tournament, and I think I'm very impressed to just see the improvement of Apex as an in-game leader. I think he's figured out how to mid-round in an English environment, which is something that is not easy for just a standard French-speaking player who's been playing on French lineups for almost his entire career. And I think he's always struggled, I think, in terms of communication, at least with the initial iterations of the international squads that Vitality has brought forward. But he stepped up. Obviously, Zywoo's clicked. with his MVP performance. Second half of the year of ZywOo is always a sight to behold, and clearly he's doing it right now as well. Dupree and Magisk, man alive, the amount of impact that these two had, the amount of holes that they dug Vitality out of. Like I think of the 2v5s that they had on the A side of Inferno against G2, and the kind of multi-kill potential that Magisk had throughout all of the grand final as well. Like those two had a hell of a tournament. And obviously Spinks is such a brilliant addition to this squad, because this guy just can do things that Masuta can't. Like they put him in very similar scenarios, but this guy will get the 3K where Masuta might just get a half kill. Like I'm seeing him like run up long side, and he's getting a kill onto the cat player from Car. He's getting a kill onto the default side planter, and then he's getting a kill onto the far CT player. Like this stuff isn't like he's doing this with no flashes. Like he's just doing this raw, and that is just astounding stuff. And if you have them all peaking like this, they win 3-1, but who really cares at this point? Exactly. If you're in the major, you're in the major. I think that they are all peaking at the right time. This team could be a playoff contender, and I think that they could go toe to toe if you have a fully powered Navi, a fully powered FaZe, not a fully powered G2, frankly, but any of those teams, maybe even a C9, you could have yourself a very, very impressive bracket in the future. I mean, who knows how we're gonna actually predict this pick'ems, because I mean, I just looking at the field right now, it looks too difficult to actually choose any favorites at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think in kind of all the pick'ems I've ever done, I've got a diamond apart from Antwerp, because I predicted Na'Vi in the final. But I think, you know, that one was quite tough. I think all the rest of them, though, I felt very predictable. Well, they have for me anyway. Like I've never struggled or like squeaked by. They've always seemed like pretty easy to predict. But this one, it feels impossible. Like, I mean, if G2 were present, maybe it adds even more into the conversation. But there is a lot of teams who are on edge, and there's no distinct one team. There's no era at the moment. There's no distinct kind of one team for me. It doesn't feel like there is. So
that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because I was going to say that the current pick'em system has almost been made to be that difficult, because it was made in an era where Astralis were farming everyone. So. Yeah, I think this major is going to be fast. Obviously, we're going to be doing our own pieces on that when nearer the time, which will be pretty exciting to see how our pick'ems go. But yeah, I've got to say this one's feeling very, very difficult, and you could pick one of 5 teams to win the whole thing. I would say, honestly.
I think one thing you mentioned about Vitality, which is kind of I mentioned this on Nart's podcast, was. For me, even though I think he's still got attention, it still feels unsung. It is like how good Magisk actually has been. I think while he did start really slow in towards the roster, I think especially in Pro League, he was just brilliant. So many times he would bail that side out of some really rough situations where like rookie errors would be so costly. Like for example, you know, Apex, he has the tendency to be very aggressive, of course, being like a born entry. It's in his nature, but. You know, when they're in man disadvantage situations, the amount of times he'd step up when he's anchoring and they get 2-3 kills and time again buy time or bail them out. For me, Magisk was just brilliant. I think stats-wise as well, he was actually not even that far off. And
I believe he was second highest rated.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, but
very, very well done.
It's just one of the things, you know, if ZywOo's not, you know, a person, he's not. He's inhuman, absolutely brilliant. But like, you know, if ZywOo's not around. Magisk was at that performance, and everyone is raving about Magisk. Everyone's talking about like, oh my god, what a performance! Like that is absolutely insane. But it's just the fact that ZywOo was just like alien. Like with that sort of 1.42 across an entire tournament is just bonkers consistency. I think that for me already slightly feels like it sets Vitality up to be not the favourites, but maybe, you know, like comfortably in that conversation. I still think there's definitely a lot to be said about kind of Na'Vi and FaZe strat saving. Definitely what we saw within the RMR, but I think Vitality are now...
They worry me, though.
They do, exactly. But Vitality
are
entering that conversation just because I think they're actually looking very good. The only thing for me is I think at times Spinks looks a little bit lost, but it's still early doors, so I'm not really going to get too caught up about it. They've got, now plenty of time. I'll say plenty of time. They've got 21 days. We're recording this on the 10th, so they've got 21 days to iron out some of the kinks there, but we'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. But I gotta say, for me, I think this roster looks very good. Dupree, who in the latter part of his Astralis days and the early parts of Vitality was fucking horrendous. He is now actually looking very stable again, and he kind of looking like the premium no love. And
Only
also,
player with
only player.
yeah.
Yeah.
With 18 out of 18 majors. I mean,
now-
that's an incredible
No
feat.
shocks, no zip.
Yeah, exactly. He's had his up and downs, Dupree, but I've got to say, I think I made a tweet. I think it was probably during Liquids or maybe one of their good maps. I think of the grand final and semi-final, about just how Elige is like his longevity for being on one organization from 2015 is absolutely unbelievable. As we said, I mean, sure, he had a poor performance in the grand final, but he stepped up a little bit in the RMR recently, hasn't he? So. He's allowed to have a bad tournament and a bad best of five. To be honest, considering he's been around for so long, and he's that one of that very select few where they've had, as I said, big dips occasionally. Like for example, Rain. For example, I mean, I meant put him in the list, but really Dupree, Magisk, Elige that I really kicked off that list with. Rain, and I think Crims was probably the other one as well that I'd put in that list of just being an ever present, and that's so impressive considering so many riflers from that era have star ones as well have fallen off.
Well, Shocks I think is the best comparison, because Shocks was it was Shock, Zip, and Dupree were the only three. That's right? It was Shocks, Dupree, Zip.
I believe so, yeah.
With the three who'd been to every single major, and of course now it's only Dupree left. And
I think Olaf and Device are probably somewhere there too.
Yeah.
Olaf was there for a while before he benched by FaZe, I think.
But that's the thing. Is like you look at now, literally the other two of the three. So Dupree still competing at Tier 1, winning titles and playing well in them. You look towards Shocks, end of his era with Liquid, pretty bad. With Apex, horrific. You look towards Zip. I mean, I've been saying it for a long time. I know I'm not the only one. He is one of the key problems as to why Astralis are playing bad. He has been bad.
We'll get onto them.
Yeah,
and we
can get onto them. Yeah, definitely in more detail. But I think, credit to Dupree. I can't remember exactly who tweeted about. I saw a good tweet, which maybe is something that's worth talking about. Is do you guys believe that Dupree is undervalued? Because I think there's definitely a case we made that he is kind of sort of undervalued,
he can have bad
underappreciated
games
in terms of, but in his grand scheme, because he is like a guy who's been around forever, been at every single major now, and the only one to do so. But a lot of people, when they're talking about like historic legendary players, everyone goes like, oh, Olaf or Forrest, whatever. But like he's not really one that ever that often enters the conversation, just because he's been consistently decent, but not a standout by any means. But do you think he gets underrated or underappreciated?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he has always been the second star of the GOAT Astralis lineup, even on TSM. He was an absolute, like, they called him the double Ds, right? And it wasn't because it was just Device. It was also Dupree. Dupree had some magical, sensational, impactful moments. I mean, you can name off so many different highlights that this guy's had, and he's been so consistent. I think one of the craziest things that I think about every day if I have to mention Dupree in a conversation, I think about the time where he goes and competes at a major after his father had passed away, and he goes and he wins the major. Like he just goes out, and I believe he was the highest rated player in that specific game, and that is just astounding. Like this guy has the heart of a champion. He's got the game of a champion. Like he's always going to play second fiddle to the likes of a Device, because Device has the impact of Device. He will always be Mr. Consistent. And when you play on Vitality, you're playing with Zywoo, so you're always going to be playing that second fiddle. But I think the mark of a champion has always been upon him, and I hope that he gets his flowers towards the tail end of his career. Because this guy's nothing more.
He's done enough to deserve it. The fact that it's we're now going the 18th he's going into now, right? And he's still at the top. He's top 3 in the world, in terms of like teams, right? I think now, if people aren't kind of waking up to kind of actually how good his career would be, I think a lot of people just kind of pass over him, especially when you bring up like not GOAT conversation. Obviously, he's not entering that by any means, but like just in terms of legendary players who, as you mentioned, like kind of when they leave, they deserve their flowers, and he deserves like some seriously special recognition.
He's the final boss.
Yeah, he's the final boss
of CS:GO.
He sort of deserves it. I think on the tail end of his career, I think it's definitely. I don't see the tail end happening kind of anytime immediately. Not within the kind of next couple of years. Not kind of the same standard of Zip and Shocks, who have kind of seriously dipped off, and it's very visible. I think Dupree's still got. I mean, obviously different roles in that sense, but still got the ability to kind of keep it ticking across for at least a couple of more years. But yeah, when he is done and dusted, what a look in like to the kind of end part of his career is going to be as well, just because of how long it's been and how many just unbelievable moments he's had. And there's still, plenty of room to say that he could have plenty more memories in the next couple of years, especially upcoming major. They're going in as one of the more consistently strong sides rather than like a FaZe or Na'Vi, as you mentioned, Trav, who I think then you're being not confident about how they're going to turn out is definitely probably the common factor there. I definitely agree with you. I think I'm a little bit cautious about what they're going to bring.
Yeah, exactly. Because Carrigan's teams do have patterns of falling off a little bit, don't they? After a certain time period. So that's worrying, and we don't know how Navi's going to be, just because Na'Vi have basically 3 different faces sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. What I will say about Dupree, just to finish off this segment, is that interview that Paladin very rightly brings up made me like Dupree. I mean, both of you know that I dislike all the Astralis players, past and present, but he's the one that I have the utmost respect for because of that particular interview, and it made me see him in a different light. So I agree.
Well, what we can move on to next is, just before we kind of delve into the recent details, that being the RMRs, we can look at the end of EPL and kind of one of the more controversial things happened during EPL, which is of course the Na'Vi versus Heroic game, a 2-hour or over 2-hour tech delay due to Bits, Sunday Young, and Simple all getting essentially DDoSed. Basically, so what happened was their PCs were being attacked with just like friend requests, or like massive packets of data, which meant it was unplayable. And we had a 2-hour delay where they had to change PCs for all of them 3 times apparently. And it was
they played on different Steam accounts, right?
Absolutely, because like fresh accounts,
they couldn't
no
play
skins.
on their main Steam accounts, no skins. Yeah, because it's the only way they could do it. It's a secret account that no one knows exists, right? So they can't get spammed.
Yeah, because their Steam IDs got leaked or something. But I think that for me, kind of just to start things off here, for people who I'm assuming most of us, obviously definitely us, but most of the people watching as well, this was like a problem that was prevalent during like 2019. I remember specifically, if you played occasionally, if you left your lobby open, you just have like thousands of guys just join your lobby, and it was like a botting thing that could happen.
Bot thing.
But this is essentially the same thing, and Valve came out around 2019 being like, okay, we've gone through, we've patched this, we've fixed it all up, it's never going to happen again. And then the fact that it's now still happening 3 years on is kind of concerning, that there's a real possibility that, with a very small amount of information like a Steam ID, which I think for the most part is pretty easy to get hold of, these massive attacks that can cause very, very big problems can happen. Definitely is something that is kind of a cause for concern, especially when more eyes and there's more attempts can be made with a major coming around the corner as well. There's definitely a possibility this can happen once further in a more important game. I don't know, very, very much concerning, since it's
a Valve Steam thing that they need to get sorted pretty quickly. Everyone was saying, oh, ESL, what the fuck are you doing? But realistically, that's completely out of their control.
I know
you put out patch notes. You put out patch notes saying that it's patched, and then you continue to use public accounts. That's just it's so worrying for TOs, because obviously I think the community would just latch on to saying, hey, that the tournament organizers are at fault here. But this could have very well happened to Blast, and we would have had the same scenario.
100%,
But it's good that, honestly, I'm glad that it happened here and not at Rio, or at the RMR even. Like, I'm fine with it not even happening at the RMR, because, dude, the amount of rapid fire matches we had there, like, you need to make sure that everybody's on their shit. So I think this is probably the best case scenario of the worst case scenario, I think that hopefully, like, this is just fixed up, and we don't have to run into this anymore. But the private accounts thing is something I don't want to see. I don't want to see everyone play with default skins.
Yeah, exactly. As much as you can like kind of hound skins and about how much of an effect they have, kind of boring looking at a green orb. Even though I do like calling it the big green when I'm casting, but I don't actually want it to be green. I want it to be blue and silver and a gun near, not some dead green orb. But spot on, right? I think this is definitely. This, because it's so public, I'm hoping it's just to kick up the arse of Valve to be like, oh, do you want to actually finally fix this? It's only been 3 years. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We can move on, of course. That was just a quick touching, though. Hopefully, it's nothing special. Actually, side note, what we can mention is how good was Simple after the 2 hours, by the way. Like,
Oh man,
Jesus Christ,
possessed,
he
right?
came out out
Yeah.
the gate swinging. Heroic had no chance. When Sybil
Yeah.
gets pissed off, there's nothing you can do. Like, give up. Like, there's actually
Mhm.
nothing, because that was like Stockholm finals simple. Like, that was like
Yeah.
just some of the best form we've seen out of him. Like, in that one specific map after the 2 hour break, like seeing out Dust 2, Jesus Christ, he was unfucking touchable. Like, Heroic can do, and you can see as well actually that Heroic were genuinely like scared of him as well. Like when
They were exhausted.
Yeah.
Like Simple's on that demon time, bro. Like
doesn't
he'll
care.
play FPL into the wee hours of the
He
night.
plays Valorant
and,
at like 3 a.m. on
it
stream. Like, he
it
doesn't
it,
care.
it showed. It showed that it
Yeah.
looked like nothing had phased him. It
Yeah.
felt like they were just a timeout for 30
Uh-huh.
seconds, and he was back in, and he just threw everything at them.
Yep.
It was
my
it was
God.
brutal.
He was so good. But we can kind of move on to a little bit of my side. We're going to go with the highlights and lowlights. There's quite a lot of highlights, but I think it's probably best to start with the lowlights. And the best place to start with lowlights is over in the Asia RMR, because an absolute disaster class from probably, I don't even think probably, I think the favourites, Rare Atom. You know, most people would have said that they were the kind of the best side coming out of Asia, or coming out of this entire region, just because of kind of results we've seen from them recently. You know, over in Challenger League Asia, they've been fantastic. For Valencia, we saw kind of moments of brilliance there for them. But yeah, to finish fourth and to lose to GG Hal, I mean, I think for me that's got to be the first of quite a few lowlights in the RMR.
Yeah, it's losing to GG Hair International, isn't it?
That's
the
the
big
best
problem.
one.
Like, I mean,
Daft
there's a
cost.
chance that I think they could have lost to Greyhound, because they played relatively okay. Greyhound
Mhm.
actually in this RMR, I've got to say, not the best opposition.
Yeah.
Very obviously, but to make it is a good job. But yeah, I was disappointed in Rare Atom. It just wasn't. You know, it wasn't the consistency from the stars that we'd seen at Valencia, for example, on LAN and everything. And when we see that sort of performance on LAN, you kind of expect it's going to continue. There's a bit of a gap, of course, but yeah, I mean, Advent is, you know, he's a bit of a legend.
Yeah.
Bless him.
He's our Hooksy.
He's our Hooksy, exactly. But yeah, it just didn't come through, and I'm very disappointed at that result. It makes you wonder where they're going to go from here, because they're not really many options for them. I think to do roster changes. I think they just need to keep working at it themselves. But the problem is, how do you work it yourselves? Because you're stuck in a region which doesn't have much other than Challenger League, really. I would say,
Yeah.
unless they go
And
to
there's
EU.
there's no IEM China anymore, so you can't even attend that.
Yeah, what do
so,
they do, right? I mean, can you even suggest changes that they make? I was having to think about this the other day, of like kind of what they can even do. Is it even worth it as well? That's the other thing.
You can make an argument to maybe say, okay, maybe Kaze's gotten too old, and maybe you try to trim down even that and go with a younger Opper. But I think Kaze's like the soul of this team, and I don't
I
think you
agree.
could just remove him outright. So anywhere you really go, you're kind of struggling. I think if you want to completely change up the system, you get rid of Advent, but even
Yeah.
then, again, I don't think that you get rid of him, because he frankly was the one who found Jamyoung and Mercury and
Yeah.
whatnot. So I don't think they should take that risk either. So it's just like, yeah, they have limited opportunities, but why not just take another crack at it? Come back at I
Yeah.
believe the next event that they'll have is probably conference, right? Like you'd think that they'd
Yeah.
go deep enough into Challenger League Asia, and
You'd hope they'll stay together. That's the thing,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
because
That's
just the fact of the matter with these sort of rosters is that, do they have the economic backbone, I guess you could say, to stick with it, knowing that it's pretty much a dead end in 90% of events for them, because they can't really do much. Like,
Yeah.
it's a tough one. I mean, I hope that they do, because they're the main team really from that region that's excited me the most, I would say. I haven't seen really much from. I mean, Lin Vision have been okay. Wings Up, of course, had that little
that's the
stint.
thing. Lim Vision are actually regarded as better than them now. They beat them in Challenger League, and pretty bad as well. And there's definitely room to be said that I think if things pan out the same way they are going to at the moment, Rare Atom in their bracket will meet IHC, who IHC at the moment are better than Rare Atom. So I actually kind of, the way things are panning out for them at the moment, I think they're definitely in a massive slump where I don't actually think they'll even make the finals of
Right.
Because I think it'll be IHC Lim Vision at the moment.
And then missing out on a major as well is like missing out on stickers can sometimes be roster/organization killing, can't it? So like it's a big deal. IHC, I'm glad they've managed to sort of stick together and make another major. I think that's great for them. But yeah, Rare Atom to miss out. I think everyone that I know picked Rare Atom IHC. No one picked Greyhound that I actually know of, apart from Gozzy Boys probably. So
I think actually credit to him. NATO Saphinx and Scriv, I think were the two. Sorry. No, Scriv went GG How first, which was actually full troll.
Brilliant.
Full troll. Of
course he did.
I can love Scriv, full troll. But yeah, NATO got, from off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure NATO got it like spot on. Apart from, I think he put Rare Atom third, and GG How fourth, which. I mean, that's actually, I think he was the most accurate.
Yeah, he knew something we didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, he was probably the most accurate out of all of us. So
insider info there, but yeah, I think this is actually a bit more of a long-term problem for Atom though, and kind of why I wanted to put them into my lowlights, because they lost to Linvision, and that was a pretty bad game. That was back in like week 3 of Challenge, like early doors Challenge League, but it shows that like this whole season has been quite rough for them. They meet IHC in the semi-finals. They should win their first game in playoffs, which is going to be Lord Rabbit, who, who the fuck is Lord Rabbit? So they should farm them. But then they meet IHC, and I think how things are panning out right now, IHC should beat them. Where for Linvision, they've got just like a free run all the way to the finals, because like the teams on their side of the bracket, NKT, Arav, and YK Gaming, they're not going to struggle.
NKT still is going through their own rebuild, right?
Exactly.
So
they got rid of Impression. They're like kind of in a little bit of a weird spot. So the only thing I was thinking of is, what is the power dynamic and the money situation like over towards that region?
Rare Atom has so much money. Rare Atom has so much money. Yeah.
Surely they could go around. Okay, first of all, if you think of free agents, the one that comes to mind if you're going to make a change, Advent for me, I think it maybe is a bit past that. I know obviously there's the whole historic thing about he found the youngsters coming in like Jam Young and Mercury.
What if he got Bente?
That's what I was going to say. Bente, he's a free agent, right? And he speaks Mandarin. He can slot into that team. He has played with some of them before as well, so it's not exactly like it's a.
Would he IGL?
Yeah, he would IGL.
I think he could IGL.
That's what I was thinking. So that was the initial change I was gonna propose, was Bentet instead of Advent. And I think especially if they don't make it through Challenger League Asia, then there has to be changes, or else they're gonna keep being meh. And that would be the first choice that kind of comes to my hand, is Bentet, because he's got that EU experience. I still think he is definitely worth it. I think he's good. He's kind of just in a bit of a limbo now. But the thing I was asking about power was about, because I think Starry over towards Linvision is one of the best riflers in that region. And if they can like convince him over, that's such an influx of firepower in a guy who speaks the same language, right? So he can slot in. It's not going to be a problem there. If they could like have that money where they could, convince him. Obviously, Linvision are never going to want to let him go, but everybody has a price, right? So
that's the thing. Also, like he's young, sure, but the problem is that
something stupid.
Like the problem is that Mercury, is it Mercury or Mosier that's really young as well? Which one is?
I think they're both pretty young.
I think Mosier is the really young one. I think
Mosier is the really young one. I'm pretty.
Yeah. Mosier is 17.
Yeah, there you go.
Same
as
Starry.
So I think realistically, Mercury being 21, Mercury's the better rated. I think Mosier. Let's see.
Definitely Mercury. Yeah, Mercury and Jam Young.
He's like the big
Mercury. So that duo is amazing. Then you have to think, like, if you don't want to lose that duo, do you want to, like, Jam Young's just like amazing as well. So like realistically,
you can't get rid of him.
He's the untouchable. There's no way. He's the hero.
So so if you want to break up that duo, and maybe take the younger player over Mosier, for example, then maybe you say you could take him. But again, it just makes you. I think maybe they just have to do it. I don't know. I agree with you. Bentet Starry, I think, would make it very, very exciting, and then make you think that could put them into a major again. But deciding who to replace, I don't want that job, basically.
I'll give you an update here. They have already been qualified for the conference because of the previous seasons of Asia Pacific.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that actually means that we could have some really good Asian teams attend.
What is it gonna be? One more as well.
Conference. Yeah, it'll be one more from this season.
It'll be Linvision then, probably. Like the way they're playing, they're untouchable at the moment. So
it could be Linvision or it could be IHC. Like either team, I don't care. Like that'd be super awesome to see them in the EPL circuit. So we've got a pretty interesting couple of weeks on our hands, just with all the ECL playoffs going underway, but Asia specifically.
Just a side note as well. I don't know too much about them, but I was speaking to someone who I was doing Challenge League. It might be Yumi actually. But apparently, so as much as I kind of like did par them a little bit, so Lord Rabbit, who they're also another Chinese team. Apparently, they've got some youngsters in there who are pretty good, which are apparently growing in the scene. But I don't know too much about them. But just kind of, so I sound really smart in the future when one of them gets picked up for Rare Atom. I'm just gonna throw them out there. Apparently, there's some youngsters there that are very good. With like domestically, they're really well known. I think it's more a case of they're like, you know, young pug stars kind of thing, and no one really knows how good they're actually going to get, but they have like a really high skill ceiling. So who knows? We never know. They could be safe. But yeah, that's going to be my first highlight. But I think, you know, on the other side of things, I mean, a highlight is IHC rekindling the flame a little bit. We're kind of seeing them look pretty good. And Greyhound grafting through. I mean, you know, they took down Rare Atom in what was a long match. Bear in mind, those games would start local time for me and Trav like 4 a.m. So normally we wake up and they'd be done. And I woke up and it was still going. So I did actually end up watching the last map of that one, and it was a pretty unfortunate clutch on Vertigo where Advent had an opportunity for a 1 versus 2, and he tags him down to like 4 points of HP, but he doesn't realize that he's done it and he loses. So credit to Greyhound. It's good to see Aussies there. We're very excited.
What I will say about that event, just to finish it off before we move on to what I assume is another highlight of yours, is the fact that crowd and the fact that it was actually bigger than Pro League was genuinely super fun to see. Actually,
awesome.
I love to see that. It was really enjoyable. And then of course the caster reaction in that particular advent clutch attempt that you mentioned was unbelievable, and that was a lot of fun actually to see that play out in an arena. And I think that was pretty sick.
Yeah,
dude,
Pilsky, those Aussies boys, they're so good at casting. All of them as well. Conky on the stage,
yeah,
like, it's amazing. Even the 4 that we had for Melbourne, or like kind of the 5 including like Conky, all of those lot, and even Komodo. I didn't actually know too much about this guy prior to the event. I think I've seen him on Twitter, but I didn't actually know who he was. I think he does a little bit more Valorant. But mate, all of them are so good. I do actually feel bad for them that they are region locked in a way. Like it's going to be kind of it's a tough ask for an organization or a TO to be flying them to Europe because how long the flight is and how expensive it is. But boy, they can cast though. Damn, they're good. They're seriously good.
And those crowds deliver, man. Those crowds are really exciting. It makes me want another IEM Sydney. I hope ESL takes note of how big the Challenger was and how big the RMR was, because these are quote unquote smaller events and they're completely booked. And I think if they can just put on another international event, this scene is so hungry to provide entertainment. Like, oh my god, like no matter who is playing, they always are engaged, and I think that is the mark of a very good region to take events there. Like, you just think about, I mean, obviously you can think about the show matches that happened in IEM Sydney as well. Like, those are always super fun, like, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the tournament, but they're just so like into it and so willing to engage with the casters and with the teams. Yeah. I think it's definitely possible. I think with kind of COVID like winding down in some aspects, I think hopefully they're willing to shift on over to Australia at some point. If they can give them an IM, I'd be very happy.
Just take me back to an IM in Australia and take me back to the Aussie casters yelling about a 50 bomb like they did with Nifty. Give me something like that again, please.
Yeah, and like people getting kicked out for doing shoeies in the stadium, like just the creme de la creme. Like that is no, but yeah, generally I think you're spot on, right? I think this is a region and a crowd that are hungry for in-person events because they've had basically arguably one of, if not the most severe COVID restrictions. Like, people couldn't even leave their cities, never mind kind of the countries. They were like, I've got a lot of family in Australia, and it was like so Melbourne specifically, actually, a lot of my family live in, and they would, they'd be stuck basically in their city or like in their houses and stuff if like one person in their area got COVID, that kind of thing. It was like very, very strict. So now that things are opening up, they're really hungry to get back into esports. I think they've kind of got a little bit shafted with their region in terms of everything. Not even just CS, Valorant's the same as well. They don't have any teams from that region, so they do struggle to kind of have any esports or local events, because now for Valve or the franchising, it's all based in Korea, so they're never gonna like be involved there as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely a case to be made where for we'd like to see. I mean, obviously everyone wants to see that. The locals want to see it, but we've seen the players as well. After the back of Melbourne, they were saying how good it was and how awesome it was having the crowd there. Even though for some reason it was full of Brazilians, I don't actually know why to this day. How so many Brazilians got out to Australia.
Yeah, that was insane, right? how are they flying over there? I don't know.
Dedication to Imperial, man.
Yeah.
Fair play. We can move on to the Americas. I think for me, the first kind of major highlight has to be EG. What a performance from them! I think, I don't want to say overperformance, but I think they played above expectations. I think on my tier list that week, obviously I did for my video, I said they go through, but I didn't expect it to be as good as that. I think I had them squeaking through, basically, like a 3-2 kind of thing. But no, I mean, credit to them. They actually very impressed me. I think we saw kind of moments of the old EG, the EG that we expected when this kind of original thing was made. That there's definitely a case to be made that they're actually no longer, I don't want to be mean here, but like an embarrassment in a sense, right? Like they actually are performing the way they're meant to.
Genuinely, I saw some NRG,
yes,
Breezy and Cirque.
Oh yeah,
genuinely.
they're back
in this event. Like some of the shots that Cirque was hitting and how calm he was in the clutch in certain situations. There was a particular, I think obviously they lost that double overtime. Double overtime, map 1 and map 2 overtime against Liquid. But Cirque was hitting some clutches and beating OC on the AWP, and like that was the sort of thing we just hadn't seen from him whatsoever. Like he there is a pattern where he plays really well in North America / Americas and then doesn't do well in EU, which you'll have to see how that comes when the actual challenger stage starts. I think they're actually one of my teams that genuinely, in my opinion, might even make it through to the main major, through the legend stage after what I've seen from them.
Yeah.
But it requires them keeping on form. Hext can't have -30 series again, like he did against Liquid. I think he went 30-60, bless him. He has to step up and stay consistent with the rest of his team. But Nilan, his IGLing and the timings that he finds on the CT side, his intuitive play is really helping this EG team. And that's what makes him particularly promising in my book.
I think
what you think about them?
Yeah, I didn't put them to go through because I just thought that their group was a little too easy at EPL. That a lot of teams probably underestimated them, and I thought they overperformed. So I thought that they would fall short because the competition in the Americas RMR was just really, really strong, and I just thought that they'd have their number like just written down by any other team, but that wasn't the case. I think all of the games that they played, they looked very competitive in, and that in and of itself is like a super huge boon. I thought they would straight up lose the first best of 1 to Nouns, just because I know some of the players that are on that team, and they have the psychological edge to some of these players that have been newly added to EG. But man, Hext, this guy is like such a diamond in the rough and such a huge thing to have for the NA scene. This gives so much hope to the EGPAs, the EGCDs. I don't care. Not black and white. I don't give a shit. But you know, all the ECL teams that are out there, even the Nouns that they played, like it tells them that hey, like literally anybody can do it in the region. The region has so much to give. There's so much potential in this region, and Hext was kind of considered like the third string like best player on CD. Like he wasn't even supposed to be regarded as the best player. And for him to perform this well is like obviously super cool. The balls that this guy has, like to kind of shout and scream and show us energy. He's making like Breeze and Cirque smile. Like these guys haven't smiled in years. Like it's absolutely insane the amount of stuff that this guy's been able to do. And obviously that's just reignited the older core. You see Breezy, man, this guy's a role player, but he was a damn good one when he was good. Like the multi kills that he would get, he was like America's Magisk in some ways. Like when he was fighting in the ESL 1 New York, you think about that, like he was just unstoppable. That guy was ridiculous. And obviously Cirque, we can talk about Cirque for ages, but I still think I need more from him. I think that he definitely had flashes of brilliance, which is obviously a step above. But I think the main issue is just consistency. I just want to see more from him to at that same level. And I think that I think if they got in like an upper like a Mantu or something, they could be top 15 easy. Like compete for top 10.
I think Mantu's such a solid.
On Mantu.
Yeah, I think
these are the chance.
90% of teams who are like kind of struggling with AWPers, Mantu is such a it seems like an easy pickup. I'm not sure if there's something else going on, because I'm surprised that he hasn't been just plucked up already. I think there's there's a real lack of consistent AWPers who aren't like
he's still on the bench. If he's a buyout still.
maybe
If he's
it's
still on the bench,
contracts.
OG's probably locked him up, right?
Yeah, it may be a contract thing, but like is buyout stupid or something along those lines. But hopefully after this RMR cycle, going into 2023, Mantu is someone who comes to the forefront of our minds in terms of Orbis to be picked up, because obviously I think he's very good. But it's spot on. I think he would be such a nice addition. But things seem to be going pretty well for them, so not too shabby. Second place overall actually is really good. Another kind of, I guess, double highlight here for me, just because of I didn't really have them being as good as they were. 9Z and 00 Nation, I think I didn't even put either of them going through in mine. But 9Z...
Who won the diamond coin, Neo? Who won the
I
haven't
worked out.
Oh, for God's sake.
He can't be fucked.
Put some fucking effort in, mate. Come on.
I actually started. I started this morning.
Okay.
And I started the video. And I did NATO, and I went through. I was like working on the points in car, and I was like, man, I've been here like 15 minutes, and I'm only just getting to EUB. I was like, fuck this. I just scrapped it. I'm gonna do something else. I went for a walk.
You all get diamond coins. We all get
one.
No, I'm gonna do it probably on the way or on my flight tomorrow, just because then I've got nothing better to do then. But I sat down today and I was like, nah, CBA, man, I've got a day off. I'm not graphing this.
But I will agree with you, though, by the way. Like, 9Z, the fact that they've qualified with their new addition, Buddha, and NQZ as well, who's 17. Like, his life has changed, and the man's fucking 8 years... 1, 2, 3...
Quick maths.
9 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So I'm pissed off about that. But yeah, I'm absolutely delighted for them, I've got to say. And I think the same goes for 00. Oh, sorry, I'll let you go.
No, go ahead.
9Z.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to finish 00 Nation because Neo mentioned it as well. We hadn't really seen them play since Valencia much at all, and that concerned me about 00 Nation. But the way they played, there was some Coldzera revolt, which scares you, doesn't it? So I think making it through with that God-sent core, and it's the Tackhold, the classic partnership, for them, we'll get onto Imperial obviously, but for them to get through alongside Imperial is just like a dream come true for this particular major. So.
I think the big thing about 0-0 was always that, like, can Coldzera roll it back? Can he, like, show back up again? Because the core of this team has already proven themselves. Like, Godsent was already an impressive roster. Obviously, we're talking about Dumal, Lado, and Taco. And Try was obviously doing Try things. Like, he was still very much delivering on the AWP. Yeah. But you needed, like, the odd clutch from Cold, the odd multi-kill from Cold. And you weren't getting that prior. At least... that was why I think they kind of held themselves back at Valencia. But they showed up here. They had a chip on their shoulder, Coldzera especially, and him showing that fire again. That is exactly what you need from this guy. You need him to be that kind of energetic player, because Dumal and Lado aren't the most like hype guys. Like they show energy here or there, but they're not the most hype guys. Try as well. Like it needs to be Coldzera. I think that's one of the biggest roles that he needs. And now they're playing in Rio. They've got a bit more crowd backing in their side. So I think that this team should be pretty dangerous going into the challenger stage. Honestly, I think they'll be more dangerous than Imperial as a whole.
I agree.
But I actually agree.
I think their ceiling is a little bit higher. But yeah, I think that they've been looking really, really good, and they completely deserve their 3-1. Yeah. As far as 9Z is concerned, honestly, I think that them qualifying this time is more impressive than the previous time.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like you've got an even more unproven players with NQZ and Buddha. You've basically created an academy roster who you never pulled from for the entire roster's inception, and now you bring in Buddha. This guy's obviously filling in for Rox, and that was super impressive to see him just slot in, because Rox was touted to be the next player from Uruguay. And he did very well for himself. And then NQZ, man, like come on, like you had so many fantastic operas on the squad, and you had so many big boots to fill in that regard too, and he still delivered. Like, man, talk about like making an IGL out of Max as well. Like that, all of these stories just coalescing into a very formidable record against some good teams, right? Yeah. They beat Imperial after coming back, I think, from like an 11-4, 13-2 half or something like crazy deficit like that. They came back against 0-0 as well, and then they kept it close against EG. And so I think that they completely deserve whatever credit that they have, because it's a tough route. I think any team that came from the Americas RMR that was kind of on the fringes, deserves all the
Yeah.
plaudits for everything that they did.
I think for me, like 9Z, I'm very impressed with what they did, just because I think I would happily admit I personally slept in them quite a bit. I just thought with the changes, like it was such big boots to fill that I thought it was maybe going to be on a bit of a nice edge. But for Zero Nation, I fully did not expect them at all to make it through, just because of how inconsistent they've been recently. But I'm so pleasantly surprised to see it, just because of like how legendary it is to have essentially the old SK, all of them. You know, obviously,
We all picked Pain.
Yeah,
we all picked Pain, didn't we?
Yeah,
Instead of-
exactly.
We all
All picked Pain. But it's like, you know, having that basically all the player. I mean, there was that kind of picture floating around on Twitter of kind of the old SK roster, kind of, and all of them have now made it. Well, for me, I just think that now makes this upcoming major going to be even more legendary, because you've got the five Brazilians, the guys who everybody looks towards, the guys that
the last Classico.
These are the guys that we talk about when we talk about, you know, Brazilian CS:GO. It's these five. It's split across Zero Nation and Imperial. It's so awesome to see them. And of course, now you've got the new guard as well, Furia. I mean, I've got loose term, but you know, they still are kind of the newish guard of Brazilian. But you got the legends and then the up and comers. But yeah, it's really nice to see. Also, I wasn't even going to include this as a highlight, but I just got to mention it. How good was the qualification game between Imperial and Complexity as well?
Oh,
Man,
no, brother.
That
is
is
the
all the
highlight.
RMR.
That was
best
that
game
was
of
the highlight.
every single RMR. It was the best match.
I was
Every single one.
losing my shit at that. Like, it was such a good game. I was in like a group watching it, and it was insane. I kind of did sleep on it a little bit in terms of I just didn't think it would be as insane as it was, but like falling on overpass at like 14 or whatever it was, and he hits that shot like sitting in the smoke onto his Grim on Dumpster. I mean, like, the smallest moments like that. I mean,
there was the moments where like he's sitting on sign and he's like double cladding somebody back flower, like one headshot into a body shot, like just like
ridiculous.
mind-blowing stuff. Like it is so poetic that
vintage.
Imperial managed to do it on overpass. You know, I discussed about this previously with Travis, of like, this is the map that Brazil made their name on. You think about Tempo Storm, you think about LG, you think about SK, you think about Keed Stars. All of these teams all shared overpass as the kind of crowning jewel of Brazilian Counter-Strike. And the fact they ended their qualification run on that map, just grinding it out against Complexity, who, mind you, are an incredibly good overpass team. There are no slouches on the map. They started their kind of redemption run as an organization with this Halzer infused lineup against Na'Vi in the Blastfall groups on overpass. So they are not a bad team by any means, and them losing to Imperial in the fashion that they did, it's just so poetic. All the movie storylines that you want to write are just in full display. It just feels so right in some ways. Like, obviously, commiserations to Complexity that they won't be able to play, because in some ways you could argue they're the quote unquote the better team. But Imperial on the day wanted it just a little bit more, and we're gonna see some legendary shit for them in Rio.
It's crazy, right? It's crazy because as well, like, Imperial have done it again. They've again defeated up and comers who are trying to get through to the next stage. There was Cloud9 and 4's last major, wasn't it? That they both they beat both of them. And now this major, it's not the actual major, it's the RMR, but still, same thing. Complexity class is the better team. Couldn't get it done. And I mean, I think, Paladin, you mentioned to me as well that Thorin actually put out a really good tweet about saying how, you know, they're the gatekeepers, and if you can't get through them, then you don't deserve to be there. And
spot on.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that for me as well, it just is really enjoyable just to see not just the fact that it's the perfect dream story of them making the very final slot to get there. Like, it's just that you couldn't have written that better if you're ESL/IEM. But also there was wizardry. There was magic wizardry, whatever you want to call it, in the entirety of that Complexity series that we just haven't seen for like 6 years. Fallen getting collaterals out of nowhere. Like, he wasn't even... he was okay, like in the previous major, for example, right? But this time, he's actually performing so well against a team that pushed FaZe all the way like a few weeks ago. Which is unbelievable. And like, the way he performed was better than I think anyone was ever expecting. Fur was doing great work again. We have to note Cello being a genius pickup compared to, I think, really, there were so many players they could have gone to, but it was a perfect choice. He was insane on T-side especially. CT side he fell off a little bit, but the Fall and Fur did the work then. Vinny's just the man you can always rely on as well. And yeah, it's not, as you say, I actually agree with you in the fact that I think 0-0 Nation might turn out to be better in the challenger stage, and Imperial, maybe it will just be like a huge wave of relief for finally making an event which could be their final event. You never know. It could be their final event as a group. It could genuinely be the last dance now at the Rio Major. So there'll be a huge wave of relief for them, and maybe they'll play better, or maybe they'll just relax and say, okay, whatever comes now. But we'll see. Either way, they've made it. They deserve it. And my heart goes out to Complexity for an incredible series, but I think realistically, it's right that they made it for Rio.
The ESL script writers had an absolute crack of a storyline there. I mean, that is just brilliant. And yeah, like I said, I mean, it's just great to see kind of those two teams going towards Brazil in front of their home crowd. I hope it actually kind of spurs them on to really be kind of overly competitive in a sense. Because we've seen over performances, quote unquote, from Imperial last time at Antwerp, so I'm hoping we can see kind of more of the same, because that was just what a game. Genuinely the best game of the RMR, and the fact that it's only the RMR, the fact that it's kind of, we're not even at the major yet, I'm already getting incredible storylines, narratives, incredible performances, some legends coming back into form. It's
an analyst's wet dream,
yeah, I know.
Like, this is shit you dream about.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, those guys on the desk are absolutely swimming right now in points.
Yeah.
That docket that they're writing out is absolutely, chock a block. But it also makes you, so excited as just a spectator. Obviously, all of us, everyone at home watching, or the most are, will be spectators. No part, and it makes you so excited to actually, you're invested, because there's so much going on. I'm so excited. I think this is probably the most excited I've been for a major probably ever, I'd say. And we were kind of talking about it a couple of episodes ago about Blast following this up with these kind of things happening now. I think Blast going to seriously struggle to one up this, because everything is already kind of seeming like it's looking pretty perfect over there.
Blast production is going to be absolutely unbelievable, but it's not going to have the hype that a Brazilian major is going to have.
Yeah, exactly.
As simple as that.
Exactly.
But we're blessed. We're blessed. Next two majors, we're absolutely blessed. Anyway, that's future. Let's talk about the past and the present.
Exactly. We can move on to Americas. One thing I was going to suggest. So I kind of had a thought about this. I was having a lot of conversation. For Complexity, though, do you believe this is a cause for concern in terms of that there needs to be any changes, or there needs to be? I think I know it's still early doors, but do you still have faith in this side? Kind of, this is kind of a blip on the radar more than anything.
I have faith.
Yeah, I have complete faith in Complexity. I think that the main issue is you think about how many pressure scenarios have you thought the Extrasalt core has ever been in like a situation ever, like JT specifically. I was talking about this to like multiple people. Like this guy has not been in any of these kinds of scenarios.
Yeah.
Whatever, if it's either he absolutely obliterates the opponent, i.e. Extrasalt and ECL and whatnot, or even at Fun Spark. Or you have Complexity where they just get their shit kicked in and they just go home. This isn't a scenario where they have to. The pressure is on them. Even that phase game, there's no pressure on them. They qualified for the playoffs. Who cares? This is the game where they are expected to win. And at that point, you kind of all these players, Fang, Floppy, Halzerk, JT. You can see all the nerves starting to emerge in that overtime situation on Overpass, where Fallen is literally in their heads. Like he's legitimately in their heads. And you think about how he did it against Forza, how he did it against C9. Complexity is the same team. I think Cloud9 is still a very, very good team. They stuck it out. They're still doing well. I think Complexity has a very similar situation. Hey, you got to sit out a major, but you got to tip your hat to who you lost to, and you just got to take it on the chin and say, look, this is a great learning experience for us. We learned how to play in a pressure environment. We talked to our psychologists. We learned from this. And so when we do make a deeper playoff run in the future, and we say, hey, we got to get out of these groups, and we get into that pressure, like, I don't know, like a Swiss stage 2-2 or like a elimination GSL game, like we're not worried. We can fight through that very comfortably because Fallen tested us in the RMR. I think this is a big learning experience for them.
That's it. We can take a look at Group A for EU, and I think if I'm going to go highlights, I'll start with highlights because there's a lot to talk about in terms of lowlights. Highlights for me, the first one I wanted to talk about was Sprout. I was cautious, and I think off the top of my head, I didn't actually put Sprout going through just because while they were great in the RMR, and they were, they're the first team to go first in the first RMR. They were brilliant, like literally the best team, technically speaking. Their online period straight after was so inconsistent. I was really worried. And with the kind of some of the Titan teams towards Group A specifically, I was worried that they were just going to really be kind of a stone in water over there and struggle. But their only loss was towards FaZe. That was a 3-mapper. And they seriously pushed FaZe. 2 out of 3 maps went to overtime. Probably one of the more fun games I've ever casted. They were unbelievably good for me. And then the other one, which we kind of do both at the same time. And obviously, Trav, I know you love words about these ones, but Gamer Legion. I'm so impressed with Gamer Legion. I didn't have Gamer Legion. I can confidently say I didn't have to go through, even though I know Shuhei pretty well and speak to him every now and again, especially whenever he plays the game. I can have a word with him. Lovely guy, but I just thought it was so early for this side. I'm so impressed. So impressed. A big Sue, indeed. A big Sue. I mean, what a master. And especially as well, the big one to mention is them against G2. What a game that was. Oh my god. What a game. But yeah, they're my 2 highlights, notably. We can kind of kickstart with them. But generally speaking, Group A, I think there's some real positives that we've taken away from this. Even the guys that make it through.
I'll pick up on your Sprout and Gamer Legion just quickly before I let Paladin take the rest of it. Sprout, for me, I was excited by this team from the very beginning. I mean, obviously, I've had a little joke about it on Twitter just the other day, which some of you may or may not have seen. Yeah. Thanks to Ronnie for that one.
Big viral one there.
Very big viral one. But yeah, I think they're a team I've always enjoyed with even some of their old rosters. I enjoyed covering them. But now they're just extra exciting, having the young duo of Alawanex and Stare. They're actually performing well on LAN now. It's taken maybe 2 events really to get used to LAN, I would say. Now they're finally here and performing fantastically as we expected they would. Refresh's IGLing has been superb. Yeah, absolutely deserves it. And to make Legend stage is remarkable. And they absolutely deserve a shot to see what they can do at the major proper. As for Gamer Legion, couldn't be happier for them. Roster wasn't even officially announced by Gamer Legion when they won the Open Qualifier. They made it through. I even covered the Open Qualifier match on HLTV. I think it was against Forward, the Mo and Doja mixed team. Yeah, that was just so much fun. And to cover them making it as well, beating Bait, Gamer Legion had one of the toughest runs in the whole RMR. Sure. Bait had it easy-ish. They beat the one difficult team in Fnatic, right? But Gamer Legion lost in overtime, in multiple overtimes to FaZe, lost in double OT to Spirit as well. They could have won both of those games. They didn't. They stuck with it. They won in the BO3s. They beat G2, which obviously we'll get onto, in remarkable fashion. One of the most remarkable results that will probably be remembered in Counter-Strike history. As at G2, it's the first time they've been knocked out by Major since 2015. But yeah, the fact they made it, the fact I got to cover them making it, Shuhei, my goat, he's my Giga Chad, no doubt about it. Screw this Hooksy kid, whatever. Hooksy's the only bloody ex-Copenhagen Flames player that didn't even make the bloody major, so who cares about him? Even the coach made it. Shuhei is insane. Akel's showing up like he used to do in Mad Lions on a certain occasion. You've got IM, the second Romanian, alongside Launex, of course, as well, to make the major.
First just like London. First time we've ever seen a Romanian at a major.
Yes, London buses analogy. You wait for one and then two come along at once. That's the way it is. And yeah, I think that I've got to have huge respect for IM and for Isaac as well, who have stuck with the roster through, I think, a year and a half of Game Legion making changes. And actually props to Game Legion, the organization, full stop anyway, for sticking around in Counter-Strike and not saying we're pulling out full stop. They date back to the years of existence and Scream. Yeah. So, like, it really says a lot how I've got to respect them. I love what they've done with this team. And I can't just finish off my thoughts without mentioning the final 2 members of the team. Kios dropped from Falcons, makes the major anyway. Legend. I bet he feels good. Bet he feels good about this one. And Ash, the coach, UK Counter-Strike legend, props, sticking with the team for over 2 years, I think, 3 maybe, close to that. King, and they deserve everything they got.
Yeah, just a side note on Ash as well. I saw a really good tweet that he tweeted. He was like, "Yeah, I've made the major, but I still lost the finals at I-Series." So that's the final boss is I-Series. That was just a brilliant tweet. Like, there's like a way to be really funny in moments of brilliance for yourself. And I think saying I've got to go back to Birmingham NEC for the I-Series final in front of 10 viewers to win it all is just that made me really laugh. But yeah, go on, Pilot, take it away. They're my 2 main highlights.
Yeah, I think you hit all the points that I wanted to hit on, Trav, about Gamer Legion. Like, I think in particular, just the organization sticking around that initial roster that they had with Existence and Scream was a Hail Mary in certain scenarios, and even when that didn't work out, they were always competitive. Like they always pushed any and every team that was kind of the favorites for all of these close qualifiers to like your DreamHacks and your ESL Challengers, and finally actually able to do it now at the biggest stages is something that I'm sure the organization is going to be really proud of. Just to have your stickers within the game for at least a cycle of the major is going to be great for them. And I'm happy that some of these individuals are basically like cast out of the scene in some ways. Like these guys are basically misfits in some senses. I Am and Isaac didn't really have anywhere to go, even though they were touted to be talents. And they stuck around. They still wanted to keep out the grind. And obviously we can talk about Kiaz, Acor, and Shuhei. Like they both, all three of them, like Acor and Kiaz were kind of cast aside as not good enough.
Especially
and I think,
Acor, right? I mean,
Acor
he had a
especially.
rough time in the. And you know what? Credit to Yanko actually. Yanko was one of the biggest. You know, he's like one of the biggest Acor haters, and he tweeted saying, you know, like I was one of the biggest haters, but this guy's really found his form again. So I think it's spot on, right? These were cast outs, and look where they are now.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing for me, like about Shuhei, is that like, look, guys, if you're Mouse, I think you have made a serious mistake to let this guy go.
Yeah.
I think that he was the sole reason. I think everybody on Mouse NXT will realize this after it is too late, but this is the reason why your team worked so well. There is a reason, and there's a difficult nature to pulling these types of individuals together onto one roster and make them all perform to the highest level possible. I know it's just an academy league, but they looked competitive. They looked like a legitimate top 20 team beyond just the academy league. They were pushing tier 2 European squads.
They were higher
day
in
in
the
and
main
day out.
team at one point.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
like
how
that
good they were.
that statistic is driven by Shuhei.
Yes.
And so the fact that they have let this guy go for, I'm assuming, not much money, because I don't think Gamer Legion is the richest org to begin with. So that is making me assume that they've let this guy go for much cheaper than any of the other players in the original Mouse NXT roster. And that is going to come back to haunt them. I can guarantee you that this guy is ready for tier 1. This guy is I'll go down the list of the IGLs that he's going to have to go up against here. He went against Kerrigan, legend of the scene. He went against Chopper, another legend of the CIS squad. Hooksy, a counterpart being considered as one of the greatest IGLs to come out of the last couple of major cycles. Like, these are difficult IGLs to go up against, and he was still within all of these games. Obviously, it's great that you have your individuals to back you up, but there has to be kind of a master behind all of this craft, and I think you have to tip your hat to Shuhei. I will make videos about this guy for a while now, because he impressed me beyond belief.
I've seen him in real life. He was standing by like the press stall in Cologne, and bless him, his like, don't get me wrong, he's a good-looking lad, but like his facial shape, you know, like his picture on HLTV, it's like a bit like the Steve head from Minecraft.
Yeah.
Bless him. And in real life, it's exactly the same. As I say, he's a very good-looking lad, but like he's just looks just the same in real life, and it's very amusing to me. I love the guy.
Do you know what I say as well? He's also super nice and like very, very modest. Like I've like. This sounds super braggy. I don't mean it in the way, but like I've known him since I interviewed Torzy and JDC early doors, because actually I wanted to speak to Shuhei way back when in season 1 of We Play, and we've spoken on Twitter, but we've never actually arranged the interview. And I hopefully that's something we do maybe prior to the major or something, because he's a really nice dude. But you know, I'd speak to him after his games and after seasons and after everything. He's really, you can tell the guy, he grafts as well. So I'm glad he's finally getting the recognition he deserves, because like I think you're spot on. I think while the individuals over towards that Mouse NXT roster that went 4 for 4, right? They were like unbelievable, untouchable, whatever. You know, your Torzies, your JDCs. Your Xershins. I think Xershin is, for me, still actually maybe another one who's as good as Shuhei in terms of what he actually brings to a server. I do actually believe Xershin is definitely comfortably can sit in any.
There's a big difference. Team, IGL and Rifler, but still, I agree with you. Like, same output of impact.
Seriously, but yeah, I think it's spot on. I think Shuhei is absolutely one of the thing that you know. What do they say? It's like you don't really appreciate something until you let it go, or whatever the saying is. I think Miles
You don't know what you had until
until it's gone. Exactly.
Right?
And
that's it.
especially when you see, not that Dexter's bad by any means, but it's just the fact that they could have had basically just free, free of their own volition. Kind of this guy bringing off the academy to the side, who knows the coach, knows the other 3 players. I mean, it's the dream for an academy basically to have this level of talent. But they let him go, and now he's going to come back to bite them. And just a side note on top of that as well, you got to feel for Shane. He's the only one from that roster, including the coach, who hasn't made it. You know, Cyclone, of course, is now with the main team. All the rest of them, of course, made it to major, and Shane is a free agent, I'm pretty sure, still.
It's sad.
Yeah.
I agree, it's sad, but don't forget, like, during that period where Mouse NXT and Mouse were hilariously very close to each other in the world rankings, and Mouse NXT almost overtook them. Many people said
1 week, one rank.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember that now. Good point. But lots of people genuinely said Mouse NXT plus Frozen. And guess what? They were 1 player away from making that a reality. And we're going with Shu here. And who knows? Maybe they even will go for that again one day. Because it wouldn't be surprised if they're the sort of team to say, listen, we made a mistake dropping you. We can have you back now. Because Dexter, I don't think is going to be there forever. I think that's probably something that is, while it's working right now, is got an expiry date. So, I mean, everything has an expiry date, but you know what I mean. Maybe sooner expiry date than some people think. So, yeah, genuinely, Mouse NXT plus Frozen is incredible, and I think it could work within the future. But anyway, it's time to get on to the
lowlights. I think probably the best lowlight that we have to talk about. G2 Gamers 2. Wow, what a stinker for them. 1-3 they finish. The thing that makes this for me just so beautiful and sweet and like funny is they started off the RMR with 16-0, and you're like, damn, like these guys, they're coming here to play. Like they're here to win. 16-0 ecstatic, tier 2, move out the way. G2 are gonna farm this. 3-0 on the cards, baby. How wrong we were, brother. They go 1-3 after 16-0ing. Ecstatic is it's just hilarious. But I think there's a lot to be said about how concerning this is, kind of because, you know, G2 should, and in everybody's eyes, I don't think any sane person in the entire world would have, you know, comfortably been like, all right, G2 are making it. Like, I don't think anybody would have, because they, you know, they're always up there in that conversation. So the fact that they're losing to sides like 1win, who, not to like shit on 1win, but like, you know, it's 1win, and then again, Gamer Legion, who just outclassed them. They shouldn't be getting outclassed by Gamer Legion, who are still so fresh and still, you know, as you mentioned, Trav, they weren't even announced when they won the RMR. So yeah, I think G2 has to be, obviously Astralis is one to mention, but with Mister coming in, we kind of all, no one really, I think it's actually not even upset that they didn't make it through. And I think, you know, it's probably needed, I think is the best way to put it for Astralis. There's a lot that needs to be done, a full rebuild necessity. But yeah, the biggest lowlight, probably the entire thing, more than Rare Atom, is G2 for me.
It's so interesting that the game that they had against Cloud9 was so close. Like, it was on a knife's edge. And what a different complexion that we might have had to this RMR if they had just a couple swing rounds going in their favor.
Yeah.
The amount of confidence they would have had to close out the 2-0. I think they might have ended up playing like NIP.
Yes,
and that was a very winnable game, I'd like to think. We genuinely could have seen them go 3-0. But taking it to Ancient against 1win, I mean, I've said this time and time again, I don't think Ancient should be played by some of these top-level oppositions, because look, man, Tier 2 loves Ancient. They love Ancient, and they will grind that game out no matter what. And you saw them getting 6T rounds and then snowballing it there. And then getting outclassed by Gamer Legion. Like, Gamer Legion was just a better team on Inferno. I wouldn't think I would be saying that, but they just... Shuhei was calling better. Acor was the better op. Actually, no, I'll take that back. I think Mondesi was actually the better op in that final map. He was pulling it very close. But Hunter went missing, JKS went missing, and that's when the riflers of Gamer Legion really stepped up. So I think, I don't know what you guys think about this scenario, but I personally think they shouldn't actually make any changes. They do have to sit out the major, but they've got the fall final to qualify for the world finals. I think they can amass enough points to qualify for that.
Yeah. I think so.
And I think that they'll be shoo-ins for Katowice. So I think that they shouldn't move. I think this.
I agree. The only argument that I've seen that I could maybe justify is that I just still kind of feel like JKS goes missing too much. But I know he is a role player, and I know he isn't a player who you really look towards in terms of he's not a hero rifler. He's not someone who's playing the high impact position. He does play a lot of anchors. But at times I do think he goes missing when it's really needed for someone to step up. And I think for me that was quite evident, especially against Gamer Legion. Obviously, like you mentioned it, but it was pretty evident. Like JKS couldn't get the ball rolling at all.
That and Hunter, man, Hunter went missing. I don't know
Very
where.
concerning.
I think it's really concerning because the whole conversation before G2 actually took to the server was, oh, Xtaz was on Twitter and he was saying, oh well, Hunter actually wasn't playing as an ideal positions. He was playing actually better in situations where he didn't even want to play in.
Yep.
So now that he's in his optimal roles and he's lurking across the map, he's going to look very good. But I think this guy looks so out of his depth. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if it's like a getting back used to those old roles thing. Yeah. But this guy just like, I don't think the stats speak the story of what Hunter looks like in the server right now. Yeah. Because he looks a shadow of himself. And that is, I think, the biggest concern for me. Because you need this guy to pop off. The whole point that you have when you bring in a Hooksy, right, is that your core of fraggers is ultimately elevated by that IGL, so that the kind of impact that the Hooksy IGL effect doesn't have is picked up by the rest of the three players. And sure, Nico and Modesty are able to do it, but you need that third player to come into things. Yeah. And I don't think Hunter was there throughout this RMR, and honestly to the tail end of EPL as well.
It's a sad one because I've been a fan of G2 since the very beginning, really. Like, I mean, when they came into CS in 2015, they took the FaZe roster, right? Or the other way around, sorry, FaZe took them. Yeah, like I've loved them since the beginning. I think 2016, I've mentioned that before, haven't I? The ECS Season 1 finals where Shox and Scream ran wild, like that was just insane. And seeing them in every major since was brilliant. And I think this is a wake-up call for sure. But also, as Paladin says, you can't justifiably replace anyone yet. Like, you need to give this roster more time. I made this point earlier on talking with Jay Retro and B-Dog, right? Realistically, for G2, you haven't gone through the cycle yet. You had your, Nico occasionally IGLing cycle. You had the LXCB cycle, which you gave some time. This Hooksy cycle has barely lasted at all. You need to give it time and to see it out, because they haven't exactly had awful results the entire way. They've been okay in Pro League. They've been okay in it once they got past Blast, right? It wasn't bad at all. So you need to give the roster more time, and it's just a shame that they've fallen by the wayside at the worst possible moment with Rio coming. Yeah. For me, I've heard arguments about replacing Hooksy and getting Alex. I brought that one up myself. Yeah. I still think you can't go through. I
think it's too early, right?
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah. That's why I'm talking about cycles. You have to let the Hooksy cycle take its course before you consider taking a whole new approach to the game, which Alex will certainly have. It'll just confuse everyone. And I think to finish it off as well, in terms of just G2 in general, people have called for JKS to perform more. He was always going to be rusty. He was living off name value for a really long time. And he's built up his numbers to certainly a better level since he first joined. He had the sort of like, the Valder sort of name value of not playing for ages, but people still thinking you're S tier. Yeah. I think he's A+ tier. S tier, not yet, but don't forget, of course, he is again playing. That's been brought up already by us. Jax's roles, quite a lot of Jax's roles, which Jax doesn't perform that well in any way. You can't expect any star player to perform, having insane numbers in the roles that Jax had. Jax was doing a really good job considering. But as we've mentioned, a final point already about G2 for me is that Hooksy's the only one from that Copenhagen and Flames team that didn't make the major, which is unbelievable. Yabi heroic, Zyphon Sprout, legend stage with Sprout, and then Roy and Nico Odos with Fnatic, and Divorborg, of course, as well with EG. Yeah. So it's very sad. I honestly feel bad for them. It's ended this way. I mean, just seeing what Nico tweeted was very upsetting, because they could tell he hasn't lost any passion. Yeah. Like, hasn't lost any passion whatsoever, and he knows that he's missed out on a lifetime or absolutely like once in a lifetime opportunity at this event. So I feel bad for them, but realistically, just have some patience, I think, and I really think they can win an S tier tournament, which would be the first time in like 5-6 years. So I just give it some time. They'll be able to win something. Whether it's consistent or not, probably not, but
it's a
don't
wake-up
drop
call.
any players.
Yeah,
Don't drop any players.
I think for me, the only thing that is I guess it's a positive and a negative is that Hooksy gets the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. When they win, it's Hooksy this, Hooksy that, and when they lose, it's Hooksy this, Hooksy that. But I actually would probably make the argument that I don't think it was actually even really Hooksy's fault, or to say that they lost.
No.
He was fine. He did his job. It was the riflers didn't show up. It was, as you rightfully mentioned, Paladin, Hunter, who had a bit of a stinker, and same can be said for JKS. But of course, there's all the argument about roles, but I think both of them went missing when they needed to, and the riflers over towards kind of like the game legion and one win as well. To be fair to them, they actually exposed that there's some pretty serious gaps as to when Hunter and JKS don't show up, they struggle. I personally don't think that Hooksy is the problem by any means. I've seen a lot of tweets already saying Hooksy's the issue. I personally don't agree with it. It's so early to even call that anyway that I think there's no kind of validity behind it. But hey ho, there for me, the absolute pretty concrete low light, I think is probably the best way to put it over towards that Group A. I mean, to round it out, maybe you can make a conversation about Eternal Fire. We'll touch on that a little bit more detail.
I will,
just on a side note, one side that I really want to mention, we don't have to really go into any detail, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised with Bait. I really think they actually played very well. I think a lot of people, if not the majority of people, were expecting to go 0-3, and they were actually very good. I think we saw some real moments, for instance, against them. I cast them against Fnatic. They battered them 69 on Ancient, and they were really good. Amster had like a 1 versus 4 clutch to win a round, which was one of the best. I think I would probably say actually the best clutch I've seen the entire major. And Alex had a ridiculous ace again, and both against full buys. They were actually very, very good. I think against Ecstatic, maybe a little bit of a warning sign in terms of they were 15-2 up and choked it all the way to overtime, but they did see it out, so that was good. But I think Bait pleasantly surprised a lot of people. Hey ho, 1 win again. Maybe they slightly overperformed in terms of I think that win against G2 was pretty cool to see. But all things considered, they didn't make it through as expected, so can't really go into much detail. Over towards the other side of things, Group B. There is, I guess this one, I think, on a little bit more to expect. I don't think there really is any standouts.
Can I just quickly say,
go on, hit me.
We've skipped Astralis because we'll get to them later.
Yes,
just so people will come back.
Exactly. So. We'll be right back to them afterwards. But, I don't know about you guys. I think for me, Group B sort of went kind of how I expected it in terms of.
I actually got 7 out of 8.
Yeah, I think,
the only one I got wrong was Heat.
Yeah,
so.
I'm pretty sure I got 8 out of 8.
8 out of 8, mate. Great bait.
8 out of 8, mate. Great bait. I actually think I got it spot on, but like not in terms of. Actually, no. What I didn't get right was I didn't get Ends going 3-0. I think that's probably the biggest thing I was going to mention for me was from bombing out of Pro League to then turning it so much, turning it around over towards the RMR. I think I'm pleasantly surprised, but I think all things considered, there wasn't any kind of major highlights or major lowlights. I think Ends looked really good. Finally, we kind of see a little more consistency out of them. But all the teams that didn't make it through, I would probably have, like in my opinion, anyway, I would say expected. I mean, a lot of people said Falcons, but I never believe them better than like a Mouse or an Outsiders. So I don't know if you guys have any points on Group B.
I think the only big thing that I'd have is OG finally qualifies as the first major. I know it doesn't seem like they should have not been at a major. Like they kind of had the caliber of team to do so previously, but for some reason they always capitulated either in the open qualifiers or even in the RMRs they'd fall apart. But they finally do it. We'll finally have OG stickers in the game. Actually, no, we had them for the 2020 ones, right? Because they qualified then.
Yeah, just the RMR stickers.
Official
no
major stickers.
Yeah.
Will finally be in for OG, and I think that's super exciting. But yeah, I think other than that, everything is a bit expected. I'm kind of bummed that Heat kind of just dropped the ball after looking pretty decent, at least at EPL. Like there was an expectation that they'd at least make the 2-2 bracket, but Falcons was just generally the better French team. Yeah. And even they weren't that great, which kind of says everything about Heat.
Yeah, they slightly struggled against Saw. I don't know if you caught any of that game. It was a kind of a game that a lot of people slept on, but Saw, who, I'm not being funny, they're not really competitive. I mean, maybe at the very most a win out of them. I didn't expect them to go anything more than 1-3. But as much as I love my boy Jerks, the GOAT, he are looking, I don't know, a little weak, especially in the French derby as well, because me and you, partner, were at conference, and that was like an awesome game, but he ended up taking that one out. I don't know. He looking at concerning, but then again, for me, I couldn't see a world in which they qualified just over the other like kind of bigger names.
Yeah, you needed somebody to bomb out, basically, like
Exactly.
have a G2-esque performance, but it wasn't to be. I think
Yeah.
this is honestly just for the best. We had so many upsets in that first
God,
RMR
yeah.
that this kind of just like evens things out. We actually have a level playing field when it comes to the Legend stage and the Challenger stage as well. So maybe the pick'ems will get a little easier. So let's just say thank you to RMRB
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
be happy that we'll have some simpler pick'ems in our horizons.
One
Yeah,
thing, just quickly, big against Vitality. That was the only upset I was actually going to talk
Yes.
about. That's the only one I forgot
Yeah,
about was big against Vitality.
that is true.
That was surprising to me, especially on Dust 2 of all maps. But yeah, aside from that, I don't know, Trav, anything more to add to it?
Really, my main things I'm going to add is that I got 7 out of 8 because they were the most of the 8 that qualified were actually the expected to make through. I thought there'd be one wild card, but I guess not. I picked Heat. I thought they'd finally make it. They didn't, unfortunately. I mean, I feel bad for them, but in the end, the one team that I want to discuss a little bit as a wild card that I was impressed with was Sangal.
Yes.
I think that they did really, really well. I was honestly, part of me wanted to see an upset and wanted to see them beat Mouse. I think Mouse Major would have been sad not to have them, but were genuinely close to beating Mouse at one point. They had a small lead on Ancient on map 3, I think it was, to try and make it through. Skrunk's been plying his trade in dog shit tier 3 tournaments for like 8 years, poor guy. And he finally gets a good team that makes him to the RMR, and get major stickers would just be unbelievable for him to actually make it then. I'm sad for them to make it through, and I will say huge props to Soulfly. I've liked him ever since ESEA Premier. I think he's a fantastic player from Turkey. Obviously, with Eternalfly having issues, you never know if they ask him to play for them, whether he says yes or not. Right now, I don't think he needs to move. I think everything's going pretty well for him. His numbers have been superb, and in whatever role he's playing, it seems to be working. Whatever role he can play, he can play multiple. Is my point.
Yeah.
I think he is working out very well for him, and I'm sad to see them miss out. But other than that, yeah, all very normal.
Shows how much faith Sangal have in him as well, because he's the only one who stuck around from that previous roster, right?
So that Turkish era.
Yeah, they must have obviously. I mean, they saw kind of how much of a gem he actually was. I'm glad he's sort of proving it. Also, I mean, it is nice to see Fuzi playing again, especially kind of. I think it's nice for me to see Fuzi playing outside of Tier 1 because I think he got a lot of flack when he was in Tier 1, and of course he wasn't going to ever put up the Vice sort of numbers. But it's glad that kind of the experience. Well, I'm glad to see the experience he got in Tier 1 kind of showed. I think he really had some moments of brilliance for that, especially in the qualifying. He was without a doubt the best player, and I was happy to kind of stand on the throne and say that he was one of the most important or the most important puzzle piece to Sangal making it to the RMR and one of the best performing AWPers throughout the RMR. So yeah, I mean, even if it just is them raising their stock value, because, Fuzi's only on loan, so it might even just be a case of them raising their stock. Hey-ho, I'm impressed with what we saw. I think you're right. I was going to ask though, Trav, what was the team that you thought were making it through? No, we were not making it through instead of Heat.
OG.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. They've been inconsistent.
That was silly of me because I really think they've turned a page. But I thought there'd be one upset, and OG of course hadn't made it before, so I was like maybe it'll continue. But yeah, I think realistically, again, a team, even though they made it, and I think everyone thought they would, outsiders were all a team as well that we're definitely not going to go 3-0.
Yes,
but we're also definitely going to qualify probably 3-2, almost certainly. And guess what they did? So there you go.
It's the classic outsiders, isn't it? It's just like like the same way that their games are always way too close for comfort. They always make everything else close for comfort as well. So it's just such classic outsiders. But I guess we can just kind of have a last final look at the teams going through to the RMR. Of course, got a nice little tweet here that HSTV did for all the completed teams. Legend stage, of course, is FaZe, NRP, Sprout, Spirit, Na'Vi, Ent, Heroic, and Liquid. Awesome to see that. And then challenges, of course, is Cloud9, B&E, OG, Big, Mouse, Vitality, EG, and 9Z. And then in the contenders, it's Gaming Legion, Fnatic, Outsiders, IHC, Greyhound, Zero Nation, Furia, and Imperial. So there are
happy
locked in teams.
So final thing I'll mention as for our RMR segment is very happy that Fnatic are there and they get stickers again for the first time in a very long time. I think Sprout was also the first one since Boston, I think.
Yes.
2019, I think. For
Fnatic was first time since 2019. So I think it's really nice for these organizations who have stuck around to get stickers again. And finally, we've got to remember, of course, as well, that Brazil is in a spooky situation of having all the success they could ever have wished for by getting Furia, 009 Nation, and Imperial at the major.
Honestly.
But none of them are in the legend stage, so they could all be eliminated and not make it any further. So I hope for Brazil's sake, one makes it. Otherwise, we might see some riots.
Yeah, Gore's gonna have a tough time controlling that fan fest when they're trying to break his stage down because all three of them lose to Gamer Legion and a Greyhound Masterclass. But
Oh god.
yeah, I think it's good to see. I'm so excited now, and of course, you know, closer to the time, we know the first round matchups, but we're gonna cover that because obviously this is 21 days out of the time of recording until the next one. So we'll do one episode just prior to the major starting where we'll go.
There's
through
a couple
our
lands
first round.
before as well.
Exactly.
There's
So we can
a
go
major
through,
special.
Yeah, a little bit of a major special, and we can kind of have our little pick-uns at going through round ones and see how things pan out from there. But we'll leave that for now. Awesome to see. I think now what is probably a good topic to head on to, but a little bit more of a I guess a solemn tone is probably one way to put it, is we can talk about Config and Astralis. We said we'd come back to it. Of course, we are back now. So revelations have been made in the story. Last time out, we had a pretty deep discussion about what went on, right? I think at the time when Jackson released that article that was just half done, basically, a lot of misinformation was inside it, which basically made it out that Config was just having like scraps in the street like it was no man's land. We've kind of now seen a tweet longer come out from him. We can start off things with Astralis' announcement. Of course, this was literally today, earlier today, about 2 p.m. So Astralis just came out and said, due to personal circumstances, Astralis and Config have agreed on a cancellation of his contract. I want to thank Christian for his passion, dedication, the investment in the team and organisation on behalf of everyone at Astralis. Thank you, Config. Basically, standard stuff. But I think kind of the thing that we're going to talk more about is the tweet longer from Config. Also released today that came out. Trav, I know you've got a lot you want to talk about, so take the floor, mate. It's all you.
I'll sort of start this one. We sort of had a bit of a debate about it, whether it's right or wrong to replace him. I think on the NART podcast we said it was the buy or sell segment, wasn't it? Where we were like,
yes,
do we keep him or get rid of him? And obviously this was before we knew any deep details, and obviously we need to hear both sides of the story. Don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely certain there's parts of this Config tweet longer which you don't need to be. You shouldn't read into it and take everything as gospel, right?
Like
it would be naive to believe he's not making some things out better than they are in his sake. But when I say better than they are, just having a read of it, I read it earlier today. Like, I urge anyone who wants to know about the situation to read it, because there's so many factors. I mean, how sorry he is. Like he says he's not perfect. How he broke his leg. How he got basically plainly 100% assaulted.
Yeah, of course.
Like, he was lying on the ground getting kicked. For God's sake, like. Promoter stole his phone. The hospital wasn't nice, and he cried every single day. He almost had a problem with his eye to the way he went blind. Like, honestly, like physically and mentally, the guy must have been absolutely destroyed. I don't think it could be a possible worse low in someone's life than that. And I really, really feel for him. And it just makes me think, honestly, even worse of Astralis, to the way that they've sort of kicked him out. Because if this is all true, and he's making sure that he's the one not at fault, that he says at the bottom of the tweet longer that the person who assaulted him was probably on drugs, and he's not the one in trouble, like they're the ones that are in trouble. Like, why haven't Astralis stuck by him? Like, I just don't understand this. And I want to know, really. It even sort of tells the tale in Astralis' statement, where it says at the bottom, like, Christian didn't want to give a full account of details, and then 10 minutes later he releases the longest, most extensive tweet longer ever. So it's like, what's the communication? Why haven't Astralis stuck by his side? I hope he gets better, and I hope he comes back, because it would be legendary. Full stop.
Hey, the first thing I'd like to mention, if I had to talk about this, is I am so disappointed in Jackson as a website.
They are shocking. They're actually
the
shocking.
article that they wrote. These kind of allegations, these sources need to be airtight, and I mean airtight. You are basically saying that a professional player has assaulted another person. Right?
Yeah, and they originally say like ESL staff or something like that as well. It was like, it was even deeper than that. It was.
I don't think you can say anything remotely like that unless you're 100% sure.
Yeah.
Not even 90%, not 80%, 100%. And putting this guy on blast like this was absolutely abhorrent, because look, take what you want out of this twit longer, because obviously there will be some caveats to it. But
And he
I think,
admits there are. He admits
yeah,
there are things that
I'm sure.
he didn't shouldn't chase him down and
So
stuff like that.
so Config is a very hot-headed guy, but I don't think he's a liar personally.
No, yeah,
I
I
don't
agree.
think I've ever seen a situation where he's lied. He's been very frank about the kind of mistakes that he's made across his career, the kind of tribulations that he's been through, and what he's had to just endure throughout his career. And I think that this has, holistically, if you have to look at it from a bird's eye view, is majority probably going to be true. I don't really see a world where a person would ever lie about majority of these things. Like, this is like, you can obviously go and read the tweet longer for yourself.
I've got
it
it
is
up
some
on screen
scary,
now, so
scary stuff.
people can have a little, like, kind of. I've been scrolling slowly through, so they can kind of follow along.
It's been some scary, scary events that happened to him. I don't wish anything upon anybody like this. Obviously, if any of this is not true, then it's condemning to his career. But I don't think he'd ever do that to himself. But all in all, I think the major thing is I'm very disappointed in Astralis yet again. This is like the third, fourth, or fifth strike that you'd have to give them for just absolutely botching another person's career and not sticking by them. I think this is also very shameful on Jackson's part. I think my heart goes out to Config to make sure that I hope that he gets through this, and I hope that he comes back because this guy is an absolute revelation of the game. He is so honestly, if you even want to look at it in terms of like, let's just like cut out the BS of the actual event happening and just Config as a player into Astralis, he is absolutely necessary for this team to succeed. You take him out and you put in Mister, you already have a very apparent result as to how they play. So like, even from an organizational perspective, are you really thinking that the blowback of this event, which by the way isn't even a blowback against Config entirely, right? Like, there's also, you have to blame Malta and the bar that they were involved with as well. Like, you were just shooting yourself in the foot if you're Astralis, regardless. Like, you knew that when you brought this guy on board that this is the kind of organizational, kind of trepidatiousness that you're gonna have to go with when you bring this guy on board, and you're dropping him based off of this. It is just abysmal from all the parties involved. And I think that Config has just been given a terrible, terrible hand. I know he brought a couple of these things upon himself, but in some aspects of it, I think it's just I don't feel like it's fair to him.
And the way it reads, like when you read the tweet longer, I'm not sure if he has done this on purpose or not, but like, he mentions friends and family. He doesn't mention a single one of his teammates other than the part where he's alone and they're in the club and he's not. Like, where are they? Are they standing up for their boy? It's not how the world works, really. Like, realistically, that's TV show sort of stuff. But are they not there? Like, why didn't they come and help? Like, obviously he had his phone like ripped away, but surely there was at least some. That was after, and surely there was like some situation where they could have come and said hello and sorted him out. Like, I don't understand. And I mean, Maui Snake already tweeted something earlier, like, what if it was blame F, like that sort of thing. Like it makes you wonder. And I mean, poor guy. Like, again, I'm just sort of scanning through it myself, and it's the fact that he was separated from the rest of his team is just insane. Like, I just don't understand that. And I hope that as you say, he's getting some psychologist support, which is really good. I think he's doing all the right things in terms of that.
I think first thing that you mentioned about them that I think is absolutely spot on. Fuck Jackson again. Like, this is not the first time that we've kind of, that we or anybody has said this about this, like, very, very not so reputable news source. I mean, I think actually in another sense, it's probably more fool us for actually kind of believing the way in which they portrayed this, because they kind of came out like this, like, direct source who's seen it all, and it just wasn't like, whoa, the two stories don't really match up very well by any means. I mean, it's not the first time. I mean, it kind of seems that all the Jackson do now is just bait likes and clicks off the back of the device. So I think it says everything you need to know about them.
Either way, the moral of the story here is: 1, don't do drugs; 2, don't be violent. Full stop.
I mean, just to play
whichever side of the story you're on.
It's like, I think there's definitely the age old saying there's three sides to every story: his side, their side, and the truth, right? And that's probably the case. I think he even admits it himself, and that definitely will be the case. But from what he said in terms of the fact that the police have come and said you are the victim, you're not the person, like, you're not being seen as the person in trouble here, you're the victim, and the other guy is being seen as the perpetrator. That is kind of enough that you need to say that, okay, maybe he actually hasn't done anything abhorrently too wrong. The fact that they've kind of proven and tested the guy to have had drugs in his system while Konfig hasn't means that, again, this guy was definitely under the influence, probably on something like that probably made him just very aggravated, from guessing from like cocaine, probably made him just like, angry and hyper, hence why that guy was, so quick to like assault Konfig, especially the whole thing, like kicking him down the stairs is just such a,
and the way it started is like, dissed my tattoos and said that it was his fucking club and I was a tattooed loser. Like, what? Like, what kind of what kind of tattooist attitude is that? Like, I just don't understand.
The
I'm
only
so
thing
confused.
is, just playing devil's advocate, like, for me, I guess someone who's been out quite a lot in my life and I have never seen like someone just switch like that, like in terms of just like instantly like, you've got shit tattoos, man, and just volley him in the head. So I think there's got to be a little bit more to this in terms of maybe Konfig, maybe he did just instantly just be like, okay, mate,
he wasn't allowed it and he got pissed too quickly, basically. That sort of thing.
I think there's definitely a statement to be made of Konfig definitely elevating the situation in some way, But I mean, all in all, I was very, very critical of Konfig last episode out, 2 weeks ago. Because of the news we had at the time, where it made it look like it was completely his fault, and this is him being a terrible role model. But I'm more than happy to kind of take a more backward stance and kind of
I'll take it back. I'll take anything I said back until we've got this new information.
Just because I actually do feel bad for the guy. I mean, from what I've read, obviously it's very heavily weighted in his favor, as it would in his statement.
Of course.
But it does seem like he's had an absolutely horrible time. And you're spot on. Where was his teammates? And also, where was Astralis? Like, they've got to have representatives. I don't know. He mentioned someone called Villads, and I had a look, and I couldn't actually find who that was. I'm not too sure if that's some backstar for Astralis, but he thanks kind of Villads for sticking around with him in Malta, especially because it's like, obviously, there's the whole thing about there's a possibility of him going blind because if he had pockets of air, because he had a fracture in his skull because of him getting kicked in the head and him getting kicked in the street and stuff. They were kind of, the doctors in Denmark were worried that if he flies, just for air pressure, if there's a pocket of air in his eye, it would have made him go blind, which is very, very serious, obviously. And the fact that he had to get like titanium rods installed into his leg, and the fact that he had to have like drill holes, like his ankles wouldn't go back into place. All this, like, there's no way that like this is a case of
traumatizing.
Yeah, this is massively affected. I think there's obviously, to play devil's advocate, I don't think Konfig's the most level-headed person in the world. I don't think he's the most calm person in the world, and I think he probably made it worse. Also, just on a side note, if you've already been denied entry and it's all gone bad, don't double dip in for fight number 2. Like, in a sense, I know he admits to it, that is pretty dumb. Like, and but then obviously that other guy has made it much worse by like kicking him in the street. So hey ho. But yeah, I feel bad for Konfig. I take kind of a lot of the stuff back what I said last time, especially after reading his statement. I think kind of most of the onus here goes on towards Jackson especially, but then also Astralis. I mean, this is, if a lot of people didn't already like Astralis, I think it'd be pretty easy to kind of see why now, just off the back of this, because a tough read, and tough to kind of just see Astralis being like, oh yeah, mate, we're not going to stick by you. Like, not like, even if you put him on the bench and support him in surgery where he's not going to be able to play for a long time, you're paying him half a wage, but it's better than nothing kind of thing.
I agree.
There's no onus on supporting him at all. They didn't care. And they're definitely, the whole mutual consideration to the contract, they definitely just convinced them into doing it, if you had to make an assumption. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel really bad for Konfig. I think I was very negative and harsh to him because he is a hot-headed person. If I had to make a guess of who was going to start a fight and get battered, Konfig would probably be one of the first names because he's very hot-headed. He's not the most level-headed person in the world. But yeah, this does seem pretty set that it actually really isn't his fault. So I do actually feel quite bad for the guy.
I think we need to sort of end this off and say as well that now Astralis are in the situation of, obviously not having qualified for the major. We'll say Mr. played relatively okay. I think he played better than
Yeah.
I was expecting him
Out
to
of
play. I
his
think he did
position,
all right.
normal roles as well, which credit to
I
him, that's
genuinely
not hard.
thought he did all right.
Yeah,
But what
agreed.
I will say is now that surely you go. This is your opportunity for Astralis to go full rebuild.
Yeah.
Finish these upcoming events, which is what, a blast. Is it a blast showdown? I
Yeah,
think it is
Blast
that they've got coming
Showdown.
up.
Yeah, full showdown.
I finish these up, and then I would say if you are genuinely getting device back, go. I would even say at this point, give up on Glaive and move on. I would say
Really?
I would honestly say blame device, build around that, and see what you can do. Like
Okay.
if you started config, I would say blame device config and build around that. But I think Glaive's had his chance now. He's been out called by ridiculous amount of different IGLs in tournaments recently. There are outlying circumstances in nearly all of these, but realistically, his era is done, I think. And Zip and Glaive need to go, and Blame and Device can be the new Astralis to push forward.
I
Astralis
was
to push
actually going to
forward
bring
into the
this
new
up
era.
because I put this on Reddit and I got quite a few responses around it. But before I kind of talk through what a couple of people said to me, I just wanted to briefly kind of ask you guys because Yanko mentioned this on the desk, and it was something that we'd also mentioned in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, that the best thing that could happen to Astralis is losing here, like not making it through. Because if they had made it through,
Agreed.
it would have just been another cycle of this just bullshit where we have to deal with watching Astralis and like wanting to have a bath of a toaster because it's just terrible viewing. But this is the best thing that happened because they can rebuild. I said on Twitter that I think you could still make the argument for Glaive and Blame, and then of course if Devi's coming in, that's huge as well. But yeah, like you said, I kind of want to ask you, and I guess part of the new Kickstarter because Trav's already kind of had a little inkling at it. But how would you kind of go about this now? What's the rebuild you're going with? How are you going about this? Are you sticking with Blame and Glaive? Are you just sticking with Blame? And then of course we're making the assumption the device is coming too. What's your thoughts here? Because obviously something has to happen.
Yeah, I think you got to get rid of Zipnix. That's
yeah.
I feel like that's pretty much understood. I think that's something that they're not gonna do. I think that obviously if you could keep config, that would be ideal, but that they're not gonna do that. And then now you gotta have to basically figure out what can you do. You are you gonna go to heroic? Are you gonna go ask them for players? Like I know Thorn was suggesting Shush and Tessus, which are roll for roll probably the best replacements. But why the hell would they ever leave?
Yes.
I don't think. I think there might even be a clause that like heroic players can't go to Astralis or something like that.
There, right? There's definitely something.
So I think that in and of itself is super worrying that they can't even poach heroic players anymore. So that's gonna be a problem. And then where do you go? Do you like ask for Esatag again? Like I don't think you'd want to get him from NIP. I don't think that even
wild card.
Go on.
Buzz.
No,
Buzz.
Yeah, Buzz isn't bad.
Buzz actually was one of the names that Devorwa, when I spoke to him, was one of the names that he mentioned of if he was to rebuild Copenhagen Flames and stay with them, he was one of the names that he said was, I think he was like first on the list, basically, was like one of the guys that he would go to just because he's known, apparently his reputation within the Danish scene is amazing. Like everyone seems to love him. So I think he's one. But yeah, so I think that's a very good suggestion.
Go ahead, Paladin. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I think that's a great shout. But let me actually just pull up the regional ranking so I have the pool of players in front of me.
Yeah, I have a couple of suggestions that I could read off while you do that. Of kind of names that if I'm Astralis, they're first on my hit list. I think the first one for me, it's very dependent on if they can even get them. I'm just gonna go under the assumption that they can. I think the first name on my list is Stair. I think that's the perfect person to pick up. I think Stair, roll for roll, fits into that team. Now that Config's not there either, I think Stair is someone you can rely on in terms of...
He's the best entry player.
He's the best entry rifler, and he's Danish. He's literally perfect. I mean, I think if you're Astralis now and you don't try and fork out a lot of money for Stair, you're making a pretty rough decision. It also, for me, it depends in terms of kind of... I'm sure to go on the assumption that they have money to work with and they have the pulling power to get anyone. Like, this is a kind of world class, whatever. But Stair was the first name for me that I thought. I think Shush is another great example. But only thing is, of course, I think Heroic have got something there where it's like you can't go to.
There's no way they let them go. There is absolutely no way.
And the only other one, I don't know if they could convince him, or I don't know if they could buy him out by any means. But if you're just looking at the player, the region, how he could work, Roy isn't a bad shout. I just don't know if they can buy him out, just because obviously he's just joined Fnatic, and he's probably got a stonking buyout since he is the guy who is the big impact player all towards Fnatic. But for me, Stair and Roy were kind of the first two names that came to my head of like, if you're gonna, or as well, Zyphon I think is actually not a bad shot. I do actually really like Zyphon as a player. I think
you could
not as good as Stair, but I think definitely up there.
You could go down even further in the pool and maybe go to Ecstatic, maybe get a Kragan or a Cabby. Those guys are a bit more inconsistent, but
Yeah.
you're gonna have to take time to mold them, and clearly Astralis doesn't know how to mold younger talents. So I think the issue is that they need to buy the best players,
Of course.
and the best players are not in openly available regions or teams right now. Like all of these players are very much satisfied in the positions that they're in.
And we're
That it's
making the
gonna be
assumption they stay Danish as well. That's like, I think.
yeah. Also,
Yeah.
I don't think in any of these players' mind they'd be like, oh my god, it's a chance to play Astralis. Astralis has burned their name down value, like their name value down so far that it's like genuinely you go to any of these players like I don't want to play with Astralis. Like I don't think that's a good idea. Like, have you seen what happened to Lucky, Farlig, and Bubsky? Like what are they doing in their careers right now? Like I don't want to do that. So like that is just it's super worrying. Yeah, you get to play with Device and Glaive, but if you actually talk to people about it when you get approached with that move, I think you can kind of wiggle your way out of it and understand that it might not be the best career move altogether. So Astralis is in a very, very terrible scenario. I think Richard Lewis called it like basically immediately after Device left and Zipnix got re-signed. It was basically like very adamantly saying that this team will never win trophies again. This team will basically be an irrelevant organization, and they will be exposed for everything they did. And lo and behold, that is exactly what's happening as of right now. I think they will be more or less irrelevant in the real near future because we've just done it. I, and Travis have all done what we could, and basically formulate the potential scenarios that they could go through, and it's shit. It's
as
bottom
well,
of the barrel.
We also sort of predicted this back in episode 1 because we spoke about how there's definitely arguments made that it's a positive, but they also fumbled Fessa a bit. I think Fessa is pretty damn good, and he's proved it, especially with Monty. I think when Monty lost, when Borup wasn't playing for Monty, there was definitely a conversation to be had about this team being garbage. Fessa played really well, to be fair to him, and as well when you look towards kind of even if there's another thing that I was thinking about that is, let's say there's a world where for some reason Device doesn't happen and they have to pick on Orpa, then you look towards kind of other Orpas they can pick. But Acor is probably one of the first to come to your mind, maybe. But another one which someone suggested on Reddit, so I'm not going to take credit to this because I actually had no idea. Regali speaks Danish. I don't know that. So. Okay. I mean,
he's on Copenhagen Flames. Yeah, exactly. So you'd expect he does.
I don't know. I just, I had this assumption that he was, Romanian and they conned in English, but no, he speaks Danish, so fair play. But yeah, I mean, Acor would be kind of the first one that comes to mind. And Regali he's pretty flexible, all things considered. I know.
You could poach Breezer. You could poach Breezer off of Ecstatic. I know I'm bringing them up again, but he looked very good on Astralis talent.
Breezer's another fumble though, isn't it? They've let him go.
They let him go as well. Yeah,
absolute bag fumblers. Also, they've fumbled Valder as well. Like when you think about kind of just the absolute bag that they fumbled. Also, the fact that literally Copenhagen Flames were offering their entire roster out, and they could have, even if they didn't want to take they also had an entire roster for 500 grand, which in CS terms is not a lot. And they were a top 8 at a major. And even if they didn't want the entire roster, they could have definitely picked apart the good parts. Let's say this is back before the Device conversations. Nikodos was flying at the time. Roy, of course, still massively in form. And even, like Zyphon, if you want to go young, right? That, fantastic team. If you think of even back then, before Device in the conversation, you go Nikodos, Roy, Zyphon, maybe Stair, and then playing on the backs of Blame F. That's a pretty damn good roster. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to happen in terms of roles, but I think it's probably best to say that they fumbled the bag a little bit and made this whole thing very hard for themselves because I don't actually know where they go from now. I can't think of who they pick up. I think people were mentioning a couple of tier 2 guys from smaller roster, even smaller, like tier 2 and tier 3 in Denmark. Some teams that I'd never even heard of. I don't think Astralis are going to want to go there. And then is there the conversation that they try and go international to try and fix this? Which I think is tough,
can't.
But I don't think they would.
The Danish fans would just despise it,
I don't
I don't
Danish
think
government
like
basically. So they just can't, right? There's just no way.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Fair enough.
Times. Very interesting. We got on to our not penultimate, our third to last topic, just a very brief one, of course, is Major, right? I think a bit of a shock to a lot of people. Basically the second that they drop out of the RMR, Eternal Fire announced that Major is leaving the team. And they obviously I'm bringing him back into xCloud, but I don't know what you guys. For me, he didn't seem like the problem. It kind of seemed like Paz was the issue in that team. He underperforming, not playing well, but he seems to have something. I don't know.
So I have thoughts on this one.
Go on.
I have thoughts on this one. I completely agree that Major is he's called the captain for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was the main man. He got them through the ESL Challenger Rotterdam qualifier. They played amazing to get through that to Rotterdam. They did genuinely relatively good in Pro League. They're just one series away, one Cloud9 win away from making playoffs. They in the RMR definitely a significant failure. Don't get me wrong, but I would agree with the fact that moving Major is confusing from the outside, but I can also, unlike some people, I can actually see some logic to this, because xCloud coming back is the man that everyone wanted. Good. You bring him back, you put him in the old roles he was really good at, the ones that Paz is currently running. You put Paz in Major's roles, and technically Paz should be more even though Major's been fantastic, Paz should be more technically gifted in those roles that Major's been putting himself in, basically, in that position. And you can make this work even better, because don't forget, they qualified for the Major before the current cycle, the previous Major, without Major. They got in there with Calix and xCloud, and they got there through either, I think it was, I can't remember whether it was Roxic or Imor or IGLing at that point. But from what I understand, according to Eternal Fire's Twitter, Imor's going to be IGLing now. And don't get me wrong, I don't like that. I think that's a bit crazy. But I do understand the logic of bringing back xCloud and putting Paz in better roles. I think this is a way to make the team, I would say, maybe slightly more dangerous at Rotterdam, because it will give them a different look, I would say. And even someone the other day, I mean, I'm gonna have to look to find it now. Tell you what, I'm gonna commit to it, okay? Do it. Because I replied to Sponge, on Twitter when he questioned, here it is. He questioned the. Let me quickly get it up on my second monitor so I can look at it properly. He questioned the removal, of course, and I do agree with him. My tweet was, bringing xCloud back is exactly what they needed, but no way to replace Major. Can't believe that. This person replied to me. I mean, obviously, don't know how much I can believe a randomer on Twitter, but he is Turkish, so I'll read what he says. Xantares and Major had a big fight back in 2018 when Xantares left Space Soldiers just a few days earlier than the Pro League in 2018. After that, Major said that he backstabbed them. Xantares' teammates were angry at them, including Calix. In one of his streams in 2019, Xantares said that Major can find a girl and get married because of the way he carried Space Soldiers, and he also told him to shut the fuck up in a rude way. He also humiliated Calix and Engine's gameplay in many streams. Xantares is just stupid IRL. Also, when Major's old team, Sangal, lost to Boca Boston, a low-tier teen mix. It's not true, they weren't a teen mix, but it was a mixed team. At the ESL Turkey Championship, Xantares tweeted in a humiliating way about his former teammates. They have been mad at each other for 4 years, and I genuinely think that is the problem. Since Xantares is the co-founder of the team, he was able to kick Calix and Major, and he did. Our gameplay was not bad, we just mostly lost clutch positions instead of set games, which explains the mentality of the team was our problem. Our default T-side was good. Sorry for bad Englando, I'm writing while walking, but I watched some of your casts of Eternal Fire and I thought they were good, so I wanted to explain. So,
credit to him, actually.
Credit to this guy. Like, it's not a bad explanation, and maybe there's some truth to it. It's still wild, but again, I can see where he's coming from and maybe why Eternal Fire did what they did.
An essay there as well. Fair play. I could never be bothered. I'll just send the meme. So yeah, credit to him. But if that is true, actually, that's really interesting, because this is the thing, which is like, I wish we could see more of, because you see more of this in traditional sports, but like, who likes and doesn't like each other so much, because there's always eyes on these. You look at professional football, for example. If someone is not getting on with someone in the team, it's very obvious, and everybody knows about it. But with CS, we don't know about this stuff, so it always ends up being a bit of a shock when it does happen. It is true. I'm not even surprised. I think it's probably the best way to put it, just because. Yeah, like you said, like I said, so this happens in traditional sports. Why would it not happen within esports? But I think what you're saying about how they're going to play the roles is really important. I'm glad that it's Imor, actually, even though there's obviously an argument to be made that minus him. I just think whenever Woxic calls, it really hinders him so much. I think like I would rather have Immor playing worse than Woxic playing worse if I'm Eternal Fire. I'd rather have Xantares and Woxic firing on all cylinders rather than Xantares and Immor firing on all cylinders. I'd rather have Immor go a little bit negative, but the other two steamroll through, and Immor falls into those those previous pass positions and pass goes into the majors. So I think you are right. I think for me it was just I kind of felt for Major in terms of I didn't actually think he played bad in the RMR. I thought he was alright. I think in a lot of the clutch situations he was actually very important. He stepped up. I guess B&E especially. He stepped up so many times for that side. And I think Paz's stats are pretty poor. All things considered, I think he's had some slow performances. But hey ho, Paladin, thoughts?
I think my main issue is that if Immor is IGLing, the roles that he plays are some pretty anchor heavy roles, and he already kind of struggles with it when he isn't even the IGL. And when that drops off, then their CT performances also drop off because he's got some tough roles. I think that's a big I I think that Paz has really disappointed me overall, that even if he takes Major's roles, I don't think he's going to do them very well. I don't think that he has the mechanical skill anymore to play tier 1. I don't think he has it. It's been really disappointing to watch him play. I feel like he's kind of just coasting.
It's a tough watch, isn't it? It's a tough watch at times. He's an absolute boulder in water in tier 1 CS at times. Like, I mean, I think it's honestly, as sad as it is to say, like he would actually look a little bit better in a team like the old Sangal, like kind of a tier 2 Turkish team. That's where he would like actually be able to like stand out and maybe have conversations about like slight resurgences. But I don't think he's there anymore. I think you're spot on. I feel like he does. Bless him. He's also next. His time's done.
Yeah. Also, I think that the conversation about xCloud is very interesting. I mean, I like this guy on the team, but my issue is that I don't want this guy to be hung out to dry again.
Yeah,
which to me that's what that's what it feels like. It feels like he is being added to this team as a scapegoat, not necessarily as a solution. And there is a key potential here for him to just completely flop. And I don't want this guy to be touted as basically like the 3rd star for this team. He doesn't need to. On the original Eternal Fire squad, he wasn't expected to be the 3rd star. He was expected to be that 4th or 5th key piece that would kind of glue all of the players together, and that's why he worked so well. But at this point, you're kind of putting a lot of work on his shoulders because look, Paz, we've already spoken about his individual skill, and then if Immor is calling, then he's going to have struggles and dips in performances as well. So you're going to basically have a core of Xantares, Woxic, and xCloud. And I don't think that xCloud has the capabilities of being the 3rd star, because I don't think those are the roles that have been given to him initially for him to succeed in that kind of situation. So overall, I think it's going to be tough for them to figure this out. Not trying to be amicable with Major is just like
it's funny, isn't
it? You basically just burned your only bridge, and I think that Eternal Fire will not be able to figure it out. Like, I think that was their ripe opportunity to just say minus Paz plus xCloud, and I think they could have done wonders. I genuinely think they could have done wonders.
What I will say though, just as a side note, I'm actually the one massive positive out of this. Well, I don't personally agree with the Major thing. If there is external problems that they don't like each other, fair enough. But I think for me, the last thing I'd say on this is that I rate that Eternal Fire just early doors, like, right, this was shit. Like, we need to make a change here. Where you see a lot of teams just coast for ages. So, I mean, credit to them that actually knocked them down. Hopefully something will comes out of it, but hey ho, who fucking knows? We can go to on a slightly lighter note for our last bit of a segment.
Yes.
We talk about this quite a lot outside of the pod, and we talk about a lot. I talk about it personally a lot on broadcast because I think it's very relevant. But we have preferences, as everyone does, when it comes towards maps, and we were gonna kind of go through our preferences of map picks, and we made a little tier list. And we'll all go through, and we'll explain one by one. I think, Paladin, yours are up first. You've gone with a Nuke and Inferno S tier, and I'll let you kind of explain the rest. Hit me.
So Nuke and Inferno, I think first of all, Nuke is just a fantastic map. I think it's the tactically most complex map that we have in the pool. It rewards very intelligent players, but it also really rewards some incredibly skilled players as well. I mean, you have some teams that are very brawly on the map. I think of NA squads liking to play the map, but they're not necessarily tactically brilliant on it. They just have some really sharp individuals.
Yes.
And you've got some really exciting kind of gimmicks to the map with the verticality of it when you think about like the vent dives and you think about the CT push and pull with the rotations. I think that's always super interesting. There's so much variety with the outside smokes, with how the CTs like to play around specific permutations of the CT smokes. So, or sorry, the outside smokes. So I think that that's always a super awesome. It's also a very big map, very open. So it allows for the AWPs to kind of wreak their havoc, and you can see some master classes. You think about simple on CT side nuke, especially to be a big thing. Inferno as well. I think it's timeless. I think it's the greatest map of all time in the CS map pool. In my humble opinion, I think that you can always count on that map to deliver. Almost every team in tier 1 can play it, which means that you're automatically getting some high octane CS given from both sides. It is, I think, the ultimate decider as to, like, since all these teams are on such even ground, it's like this perfect, like, I won't say coin flip, but it like really determines who the best team is.
No.
And I love mid-round T-side calls, like, the crazy ones where they execute onto brackets, they return to banana, execute on the B side, and then last minute they pull on over to the A side, and then they go in when there's like 2 individuals left on the A side as a CT, and you have to like have some heroics on the CT side, or the T side just run you over. Like that kind of complexity to the map is why I love it so much. I went really in depth with those S tiers, but I'll kind of run through the rest. I think Mirage is always going to be very puggy, but it still gives you very high tier CS regardless of the team. Overpass will always be a sweetheart map for me. I think I've always loved it just because of how important CT rotations are on that map specifically, because they're very quick. But if you miss the timing just by a millisecond, or you make that little hesitation, you can get punished for it, because getting back into the A site is really hard once they get smoked off, right? Like, it's actually suicide to just go up bank or go up garbage. So I think that's super interesting. And then finally, Train, I think that's a super underrated map. I think it's kind of ridiculous that people didn't give it enough plaudits. They had some of the best maps ever in CS. You think about Astralis playing that against VP in Atlanta. You think about SK versus VP on that map. You think about Astralis versus NRG at the Star Ladder Berlin Major. There's so much complexity to Train in as a whole that I think that none of the other maps a bar Nuke has. And that in and of itself, I think, is a shame that the community couldn't get behind that in terms of actually playing it casually, because it is a complex map, but nobody wanted to give it the kind of due time and strength to follow through with it. I hate Ancient and Cash. I just don't like them. Ancient is just too static. The only real map that has the only real part of that map that has any variety to it is mid. And I don't mean that about the slang term mid, but Cash as well. I think, but it is mid. Yes, I think Cash's B side I always didn't like. I think it's very like coin flip, and I never really liked it.
Such bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't. I feel like it rewarded like not very good players.
Yeah.
And Vertigo is just Resident Sleeper. It's a fantastic map to play while pugging, because you can just turn your brain off and run up ramp every round and see what happens. But oh my god, the amount of times that I have to see these ramp hits, people spamming smokes. Oh my god, they've hit the diffuser through the A default smoke. Wow, so crazy. Or oh my god, this guy's completely whiffed the B default smoke. Like I can't do it. I can't do it. And also Dust 2. It is one of the more, I think it's honestly more boring than Vertigo, because who cares? You smoke suicide, you push lower as a CT, and you do it every round, time in and time out. Somebody hit the flash, somebody didn't hit the flash. Okay, well, CT is a runaway with the half, and we kind of just shrug our shoulders and say, okay, time to go to the next one. You think about that Vitality Outsiders game, and you'll know exactly why I think Dust 2 is an absolutely horseshit map.
Yes, agreed. Trav, you've gone for an overpass nuke guest here. Hit me through.
Right.
I've actually got some questions about yours as well, which I'll come to at the end. But
yes, you can come to it at the end. I'm going to try and explain everything in much detail as possible. So Nuke, we've gone over it. It's the perfect map it's a perfect middle ground map for so many teams. I think it's perfect being S tier. It's played so much, and it deserves to be played so much. Overpass is an interesting one, because I think I absolutely love the map, but I know for a fact that some players, I think Art from Furio is one of the main ones who tweeted about it publicly, saying he hates that map and T-side provides absolutely nothing. I am happy to disagree with him on that one. I think it's superb. I think it should be kept in the game for a while longer. Maybe a little graphical overhaul wouldn't go amiss, but other than that, I think it's perfect. Mirage, so many people call for Mirage's head. I get it. It's old, it's stale, but it's still 10 times better than Dust 2 in every single way, and it deserves to keep its place in the pool. I think that I'm looking forward to when they remove it and give it a graphical overhaul and do whatever they want with it. It's because it's obviously going to happen one day, but for now it's fine. As for Train, I also agree with Paladin. I miss it in the pool. I think it deserves to be back. I think a revamped, overhauled Train, would be wonderful to replace a Dust 2 in the future. That would be one of my dream map pool choices. My B tier having 4 maps in there. Inferno. I find it funny that Paladin says he doesn't want to run up ramp running up ramp every round and doing smokes every round and spamming them is boring. When Inferno Banana is literally a carbon copy of that exact same thing.
True.
Like, hello.
But it looked different. I don't like it.
It's Inferno's grenade simulator. I agree. It provides absolute bangers, and I genuinely think it should stay for now. But it's literally it's basically the exact same thing that you complain about with other maps, and there are maps that I think that are worse than it. As for Ancient, I genuinely think it's fine. I think it's evolved in the pool very nicely to provide some bangers in the professional scene. Genuinely, I think it's okay now, and maybe a few extra tweaks can be made in the future. I think Elliot AZS mentioned one where just moving the T-spawn forward like 3 steps could be enough. Genuinely, that might not be a bad idea, because that will make it a lot harder for CTs to get control early on. Because if CTs get a B door smoke down, they have control of so much of the map. If they have Jaguar control as well.
That lane mollies that they can't ever beat those lane mollies. You have to expend smokes. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Cash 50-50. I think it's a good map to play in MM and Pugs, but I think it's slightly boring, so that's why I put it sort of very mid tier. Cobble has nostalgia value, but even though people call for it to come back, it's only nostalgia value. Drop and it was a flawed map. It was plainly a flawed map back in the day. I love it to play, but it was flawed. I don't think it would work in the professional scene apart if it doesn't have any changes. Dust 2, fucking hate it. We've been over it. It provides one or 2 bangers per entire calendar year. Like, get it out, honestly.
Oh.
My final point before Neo asks me the questions that he wants to ask me is, I think after this major, 100% they're planning to bring Tuscan in for one of these maps. I don't know what. Could be Vertigo, could be Ancient, could even be Mirage. I have no idea. My dream is that they remove Dust 2 for like a revamped Train or Tuscan. That's my ideal choice. But for now, we'll have to see after the major what they do, because they are going to make a change. I'm sure of it.
My one question I was going to ask you, Trav, is I thought you were part of Vertigang, Vertiglobals. I thought you were going to be like
it's mid tier.
Choking
It's mid tier because I love it to shut up. It's mid tier because I love it to play.
Right.
And I think it's the best map to pug, honestly,
Right,
and face it, or matchmaking, to be honest, just to stomp some noobs.
Yeah.
But I understand why so many professionals complain about it, which is why I would not be surprised if it got removed.
Okay, fair enough. We can go on to mine. So mine, I've got slightly similar stuff. I'll start from the top. Nuke, the GOAT map. Nuke is literally the reason why I started playing, watching anything CSGO. I mentioned this back into the first podcast, but for me, I used to watch KYR Speedy and Sidearms, all these guys, and all they would play was Nuke. And this is before, it's like 2014 maybe, before I'd ever watched a professional game of CSGO. Before I didn't have a PC until 2016. I used to watch them, and that's all they played, because that's the only map they liked, because they had a guy called G14, or I think his name was G14, and he was like their hard carry, and he was just a god at Nuke, and it was just hilarious. And so Nuke for me is amazing memories. When I first got it with my friends as well, it's all we played, literally all we played. We just hard play Nuke, and it's how we climbed out of silver, it's how we climbed out of gold. Like, I remember specifically using SGs and Orgs back in like 2017 to get to global. Get to Gold Nova. This is like way before the meta, just because I was such a noob, but it works. I would just single door spam, or I would like go on ramp and use a Krieg, and then just like, or use an Org and like spam my way down. I remember so specifically, so I have really good memories, but I think at the pro level, I think it's awesome. I think it really warrants some absolutely unreal performances, and it makes teams actually be smart. You can't just be like, an absolute knuckle dragger and just run forward and
Yeah.
you know, rely like even you know the bullshit that we saw it with your Kindar getting about like 5 kills in 5 rounds through smokes on banana like on Inferno. Like you can't do that as much because it relies you know, you have to actually be tactical. Your T sides are difficult. If you know what you're doing, you're gonna get punished. You actually have to have a real good game plan, a real good think about it. Your utility has to be perfect. Gapping a smoke towards our side, lost the round, unlucky, bum down. They know you're going down towards secret. They double stack ramp, GG, you're done.
You make a great point, because I think about the C9 phase game that we had where C9 misplayed the veto on accident, and you'd think that a tactical team like C9 would still be able to kind of dish something out, but they got absolutely battered.
Yes.
Like they looked just discombobulated whatsoever. You're absolutely right.
Happens in tier 2 all the time. Teams picking towards nuke or they float nuke like morons, thinking it's just a map they can float and pug, and they get farmed. It's like it is the perfect map because it means you actually have to think about it. But some performances, you know that. I remember specifically when ZywOo broke the streak on nuke of Astralis,
the blast
who
finals,
were just absolutely farming, and ZywOo comes out of nowhere with vitality, puts on monster. I'll never forget that sort of performance. So for me, nuke always been the best, goated. Overpass, I just think it's really great. I really love playing it personally, and I think watching it is awesome. I do understand the T side is tough. I think, you know, sometimes you see like, you know, 11-4 halves, and you're like, it's all right actually. They might be all right coming on towards CT side, and it happens. So that's for me. I think Cash is a map that I miss a lot. I really enjoy Cash, really enjoy playing it. It's a map which I really liked. I think new Cash is garbage because it's green. I don't know why they've done that. I think the visual...
Screw the FPS, man.
Yeah. It's, like you're walking around at 100 FPS everywhere. It's so dumb. I think the B site was it allowed morons to be morons and look much better than they were. But for me, I like Cash, and I still play Cash regularly now. Vertigo is always been a map that I've really enjoyed. I think watching it is at times tough, but it allows for certain individuals to shine. The only thing I would say that I absolutely 100% agree with is the ramp spam default does get very boring at times, but for me, what it does, it also rewards individuals who are very good at playing over towards stairs, which I think is very difficult on T side. As someone who steps up on stairs towards T side, you're like, shit, this guy knows what he's doing, man. Like, this guy's crisp. And Train, you know, people make the argument about nostalgia bias here, but I think Train was brilliant. I think there's definitely the argument that you said, Paladin, which is spot on that. I think in the more casual sense, it was so CT-sided, like teams just couldn't get out towards A at all. Same towards B. They try and drop that lower smoke on towards Grey, and they just get spammed through it. Like, you know, you'd even see times where people were using the Gev, and they'd look brilliant because they just spam through smokes. So I think at the top level was amazing. Some of the stories around on Train as well, and a lot of the pros are calling for Train to come back because of how good it was. Mirage, I think I put it in B tier because I think it's the perfect middle ground. It's great for pros, it's great for you know, newer players coming into the game, and I think it would be very foolish of CS:GO to take out of the map pool because it is just the perfect map. I know it's boring, I understand that. I know it's kind of a little bit stale, and I always say this when I cast it, you don't ever see anything new on Mirage. But Mirage is the perfect middle ground for every CSGO player. Everybody knows it's a player, so hey-ho. Ancient, I think it's a lot better now with the changes, especially over towards that A site. No, the B site even, sorry. I mean, I guess the A site too. Temple is a little bit less bullshit. The box on towards mid-site on towards B is way better. But I still think a lot of work needs to be done. I think the thing about moving spawns forward is actually pretty spot on. Because the fact that CTs can just drop one smoke and they win the round off mid control is just really stupid to me. I think at times as well, the thing what makes it really boring is it's just our B site every time. Like no one even wants to bother to go A just because of splitting through donut is such a it's such a death sentence at times.
Yeah.
You know, one good AWPer, your game's done. And then of course my wanting towards D tier. I'll save the worst for last. I think Cobble is the best of a bad bunch in terms of. I think it's kind of nice. The new Cobble is terrible. The A site. I don't know why they've done that. I don't know if you've seen it or played it recently.
It is it's impossible for that.
There's
to be
no post plant. There's literally it's impossible. There's nothing. So it's stupid. Like absolutely dumb. It would never come into the pool because of that alone. But I think there's a massive nostalgia bias. This map
I reckon they're bringing back a Cobble. I reckon they're bringing back a Cobble with Source 2. That's
they got to completely rework that shit.
They got to do some serious
refuse
work
to play it if they keep that A site.
Because that A site is terrible. And And also, I think everyone just has this massive nostalgia bias. The map was so unbalanced, and it wasn't nice to play or watch at the pro level. The pro level of Cobble was brutal at times. I know there's been some amazing performances, but anything outside of like tier 1, like anything outside of like top 20.
I think about
Cobble,
so many
I'm
games
talking
being
about
decided by VP and SK.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Navi,
like, anything outside of like top 20 teams playing Cobble was a brutal watch. You can't
That
lie.
is fair, yeah.
Watching like a tier 2 side play Cobble, I'd actually
Just being boneheaded running down the drop side.
Or like running long with like no util, and you're like, what are you doing? Just getting picked off on chicken coop. Like it's just like what like I think at the tier 1 level it was great, but I think on a wider scale it really struggled.
That is fair. Yeah.
It was so unbalanced as well. Even Drop was just like a mess at times. And then of course Inferno, I think for me it is I really don't like Inferno. I don't like playing it, I don't like watching it. I think it's very boring. I think it's very
I don't like playing it in matchmaking at all.
I despise playing it.
Come on.
It is the second worst map to play after, of course, we all know which one's the worst. But Inferno is garbage to play. I hate it. It's just so boring. I never have fun. Whenever, especially T side. I mean, I guess CT's okay because I get so bored, I just play like an ape and run into second mid every round. But like, it's so boring to just like sit, like, especially because I'm normally an A player as well. I play either short or pit. I just get so bored. Like, I really don't find it fun. And then over towards B, it's just like, who can throw the most nades? Who's got the most HEs wins the round. Dumb. And I think at the kind of, even at the tier 1 level, I really don't enjoy watching it. I hate, you'd be like, oh, good best of 3s at the start of Inferno. Shut up, man. Shut up. Think for yourself for once. Actually have an opinion that you didn't take off, someone on Twitter. You absolute moron. Not true. Grow up. It's not that good. And then finally, the worst map, without a shadow of a doubt, Dust 2. Absolute hot, steaming garbage. Like, it is so bad. I don't know how they've even crafted a map as bad as Dust 2. Like,
and the change changed nothing.
It's
the
suicide change made it worse, man. The change made it worse.
Dust 2, they've actually, from a map that I didn't think could actually possibly get as much of a cesspool of shit as it is, they've made it worse, which is like, that is actually impressive. Like, hats off to Valve. Like, that is impressive how they've made it worse. Like, I was like, oh, we'll just flip the doors, mate. It'll be all right. Yeah, no.
I don't know, man. It's so provides like, it's crazy, isn't it? It's like 1 or 2 bangers per entire calendar year, and all the CTs do is either B tunnel aggression or lower aggression or mid aggression.
And it's like
all the Ts can do B split, cap play, A play, or rush
like,
B.
And then you have the like these like mid tier teams that are like completely out of the game. They're like 0-6 in the hole, and they just rush B with like a Tech 9 through the lip smoke. Like, what the hell?
And it will win around. And it will win around because
and
it's
right
impossible to retake.
Because we were in like we won like 2v2 2v3s, and so like we've wrecked the CT economy, and now we're back under the half because we've rushed the B side with Tech 9s. Like, come on, man.
Also, as well, so while Inferno is at times like B-site simulators, just like, just run up banana and try as best I can. Okay, we've all been naded down to 20 HP. Let's maybe go and test brackets over towards long. Let's give that a shot. But Dust 2 is just which apes can win short control better. That is all it is. It's every team now.
Long control.
It's just
more than short control. I think.
No, honestly, now the default now, and I saw it a lot in the RMR, and I see it a lot in tier 2. Is they send one person out long as just cannon fodder, and then it's 4 guys go short and drop the same 2 smokes short, and then just do the dumb flash over the top, which is stupid. And then the CTs, the way that they beat it, which pisses me off.
The dumb flash over the top, that's stupid. Oh my god.
The way that CTs beat it is an even dumber flash. It's the goose flash, which you can't turn from because it pops in the palm tree. Do you know what I'm on about?
Oh yeah,
It's moronic. Like, oh man, this gets me heated. Like, I'm infuriated by this map. When I did the RMR, the best gig of my life, ruined by Dust 2, ruined the pinnacle of my casting career because it's goddamn Dust 2. Oh my lord, tough watchers, man. I hate this map so badly. Valve, like. The money I'd pay to get rid of it is actually please.
And on that note, as they say.
Oh my god! I can speak for hours. I'm sweating with fury out of Dust 2. Right, we'll leave it there. That's mine, of course. That's Trav's, and that's Paladin's. But that is us done and dusted. Later, just before we go, lads, very quickly, want to give me a summary of kind of anything you're working on the next couple of weeks. Trav, want to Kickstarters? Anything you're working on?
in Tropic versus Sprout, ESL Challenger League on Friday, 6 p.m. UK time. See you there with Dean, the legend Dean himself.
Paladin,
Champ.
what have you got for us? I know you're going to do a bit of Lisa.
Probably will have an ECL playoff game somewhere.
Nice.
That'll happen in the Americas region, and then I have some really cool ideas that I've got planning just in preparation for the major. A couple like I've got this what if series that I've been planning.
Yes.
Honestly, I talked to Trav about this, but basically trying to take some historical events that happened in CS and basically going down memory lane and talking about a different perspective of what could have happened if that event didn't happen or it happened in a different way. But look out for that might come around the like right before like the major around that time. So I've got some good ideas in the YouTube side of things, and hopefully I'll be casting the rest of the week for Elisa to close out the group stage, and then a little bit of ECL as well. So
easy,
good stuff to for these next couple of weeks.
Not too shabby. I think for myself, to be honest, I'm actually not doing a lot of CS. I've got one CS gig in the next probably, but by the time we have the next podcast, which is ESL Prem UK, the mightiest of scenes in all the world.
I
am obviously we've had to record this now because I'm flying tomorrow to Copenhagen for a week.
Didn't ask
to do some massive V-word, a lot of V-word working. Okay, while it is V-word, I won't go into too much detail. One thing I will say that is kind of cool about it is that I'm working with some pretty big names and guys who have worked in CS before as well,
Yeah,
which is quite
some
cool.
big CS
because
people, yeah.
I think it'd be nice to learn, experience the likes, your Tombas, Mitchman, those kind of people. But I won't go into too much detail. I'm doing mainly V-word stuff, and I've got ESL Prem UK in like 2 weeks exactly as of today recording. This is going out hopefully tomorrow, so on the 24th. But yes, for now, go and check out Paladin with his Elisa stuff. Of course, you got all their links and stuff around here. Paladin will be probably doing Elisa at the exact time this is coming out, so go and check it out. Trav's got a lot of ECL stuff as well. It's a bit of a banger matchup in towards advance. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you have enjoyed it. We'll be back just before the major. We'll do a major special 1 or 2 days before, talk through the first rounds. We'll go into all that detail then, and our pick'ems and all of the good stuff. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for just stopping by. Make sure to go and check out all the socials, subscribe, and all the good stuff. And for now, we bid you farewell. Thank you. Peace out. Bye-bye.